Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Adequate. Her ongoing mission, until we are cancelled and replaced by something far superior, to review every Star Trek episode and movie in existence, to seek out new and reoccurring guests and make them very uncomfortable, to boldly go where very many other Star Trek-based YouTube shows have gone before. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Treks and Trekkers throughout this planet Earth. Welcome to a live episode of Trekking Up North. I am one of your hosts, Captain Goodwill, sporting around a dashing new uniform. And joining me, as ever, is the delectable Yesian from the planet Honk. It's Science Officer Synoiz!
Hello, it is me, live. Can you believe it? How long has it been since our last actual live episode?
Last year.
Has it been like a month or something crazy?
It's been a hot minute, yes.
It's been a month, I think. So
Yes.
yeah, but we're getting over it now. We're like onwards and upwards. But yeah, are you happy to finally be in a different uniform other than just the Voyager one?
Oh my
constantly?
God, yes, because that thing cannot be washing machined. It has to be dry cleaned. And it's just like, it's a little bit funky at the moment. So I've retired. This is when I know that on the Dabble Whale, it's just all season 3 of DS9, which is the same uniform. I'm just like, no. So I'm very yes, this is the new uniform. This is a two-piece uniform with adjustable collars. So these collars actually zip off, so I can change divisions. New pips. Where are we? New pips, new badge.
Fancy.
Looking very dashing. However, I would be remiss if I did not introduce our favourite background actor from Star Trek The Boys, The Umbrella Academy, Star Trek Section 31.
Hang on. He has been in the foreground a couple of times. I just want to point that out. Like, I distinctly saw him in the foreground of a couple of episodes. So it's
Boys.
There's range there. There's range, Goodwill.
He's been in Trap, and he's also been in Thanksgiving and many, many, many other things that he cannot talk about. It's David Jones, all the way from Canada. How are you, David?
Everybody.
What is it like being in nice France?
It was beautiful out today. You can't complain. We still have summer weather up here, so got to enjoy it while it lasts, right?
This
Winter
is a
is
relation to me complaining about how absolutely shit the weather has been in the UK the last couple of days. Well, I was like, let's hang some washing out. That was a waste of time back in the
Why?
machine.
Why
it
hang
looked
the
in-
washing?
The rain stopped, the sun came out, it looked absolutely fine, and then I hung the washing out, and then the next thing I do, I look outside and I'm like, fuck. Yeah, and then David's just like, it's great here, and you're like,
Well,
It
Fuck you,
wasn't
good
in July.
Canada.
It wasn't in July. We had a lot of rain in July.
he has been a very busy person, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Treks and Trekkers. For we all know he's been in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, a brave soldier on the moon of Jagal in season 2. He is also in the new long Trek movie, Star Trek Section 31, which we can't talk about. We can't discuss any release dates, but it is coming. And Michelle Yeoh stars as Philippa Georgiou yet again in that movie. So I am very excited to spot
Did you
David.
get to admire her from afar? Did you get to did you get to like maybe lick her in passing or something?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Ah!
Okay. Oh, he's getting clever.
And if anyone
we'll get
from-
no secrets from this one.
And if anyone from Paramount Casting is listening, Starfleet Academy. Get it
Please.
Get him in.
Please.
Yes, do it.
It's only down the road.
We need to get the hat trick. He needs to get the hat trick of Star Trek shows. He needs to do.
I know, right?
I love that we
visual-
could potentially get him in more than Jeffrey Combs. We could just
Yeah. David could be the
just
new Jeffrey
technically,
Combs.
he's multiple characters so far. So
Exactly. Like I said to you when we did the 2023 review, I would like to play a Klingon someday.
I think you need to be an Andorian. You need to go full Jeffrey Combs and go from a Vorta all the way to an Andorian. We need to get the antennas on you.
I have to admit, I think you're I think it works against you that you're so handsome, because you probably just go, should we put this guy in full alien, like, prosthetics and stuff? And you're like, yes, I want to be an alien. They're like, I think it's a crime. I think it's a crime to cover this up.
He's too beautiful to be shielded.
That's it. They're like,
are you
maybe
saying
a Bajoran. We'll put ridges on the nose. That's the best we'll do.
Are you saying that Jeffrey Combs is not handsome enough?
Well, no, I wouldn't kick him out of bed. He's Jeffrey Combs.
Jeffrey Comb over. Hello to everybody.
It's more than I've got. That's more than I've got. Goodwill.
You have a beard. It's fine. Hello to everybody who is in the chat. We have got Charles Royal, Sammy Price.
Hey, Charles. Sammy.
Sammy just watched First Contact today and loved it. So yes.
It's a great movie.
Hello to Beth. Hello to Synoiz. What are you doing in the chat? Get out. Hello to Joe. And hello to Paul. And everyone else who is watching either live, recorded, on the audio. I am so sorry you are missing David's handsome face and my average face and Graham's weathered, exhausted, stressed face.
Been through the year of hell face.
The year of hell face. Yeah, let's just ram ourselves into a ship. It's just easier. But yes, we are here to discuss my most favourite Star Trek movie of all time. All the way from 1996. It is 28 years old. It doesn't look it. It doesn't sound it. But I adore every single minute. Star Trek First Contacts. Oh boy. This is like when we decided that we were going to do the movies, I was excited because I love all the Star Trek movies. Some more than others, understandably, but you've got Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, The Undiscovered Country. First Contact came out at a time of Star Trek's golden era. It was the 30th anniversary of the Star Trek franchise. The whole juggernaut was full steam ahead. Rick Berman, Brannon Braga, Ronald D. Moore at the helm, Michael Piller at the helm. And this was just the cherry on top of a delicious cake. And I don't think a movie has affected me as much as Star Trek First Contact has. This was the first film I saw in the cinema with my mother. For me, I mean, a quick summary, perfect across the board. Perfect direction from Jonathan Frakes. Perfect score by Jerry Goldsmith. Perfect cinematography. Perfect special effects. Perfect story. It's accessible for people as well as being enjoyable for Star Trek fans alike.
Well, I'd be tempted to ask Sammy because, like we say, like you know, because we were talking in the chat about whether she was like, "Can I just watch this, or do I need to load loads of Star Trek stuff?" And then she kind of watched it, and she was like, "Oh, I got that kind of thing." So it's quite fun to have that and be like, "Yeah, you don't need to know about like Locutus. You don't need to know about all these other things in order to get it." And I think that's really clever because you'd think that it would be a very gatekeepy movie, being like, "Hey, it's about a very specific incident,"
It's very good with its exposition all the way throughout the movie, from start to towards the end of the movie, where it's just like, "Hey, yeah, Picard was assimilated, and the moment he dreaded for 7 years is finally here." And you just get gradual bits of exposition about the Star Trek universe, not just Picard and the Next Generation crew. Like, oh, First Contact Day. This is where Cochrane broke the warp barrier, and this is where we met the Vulcans and ushered in what you see today. And oh yeah, Picard was assimilated 7 years ago, and he's got PTSD because of it, and he can hear the Borg, and there's this and there's this, and it introduces things into his whole trauma so beautifully, like the Borg Queen. But then this is also a movie whose legacy has lasted for the whole 28 years. It just carried on into Star Trek Voyager. It carried on into Star Trek Enterprise with a two-parter there. You then had elements of it all the way through Star Trek Picard as well. It's just, it's one of those, it's a lightning in a bottle moment, I think, for when it was done. And it is absolutely star-studded. The amount of like minor characters that are major guest stars in this that you just don't really like. Adam Scott, the comedian from Parks and Recreation, Adam Scott, he's the helmsman on the Defiant. You've got I don't know his real name, but it's Bob Pinciati from That 70s Show, Donna's father. He's Nicky the Nose on the holodeck. You've got Ethan Phillips. You've got Neelix himself playing a barman who actually goes uncredited in this film. And then
Really?
Yeah, and then Bob Picardo, Alice Krieg, for God's sakes. This is just, it's just so...
Hawk.
Yeah,
Hawk
Hawk.
too. Yeah.
It's so perfectly done, but...
Neil McDowell.
I don't know, Synoiz, this wasn't the first time you've seen this film, correct?
No, this honestly, because when you're saying this was the first movie you'd seen, do you mean it's the first movie ever, or this is the first Star Trek movie you saw?
The first movie I saw in the cinema.
Hmm.
So I'd seen movies before,
Oh, okay.
but this was my first ever trip to the theatre to see a movie, and it was Star Trek First Contact. I remember because it came out in early 1997.
Yeah.
And I was so excited for it. And immediately within the first 2 minutes, I developed a phobia of things touching eyes, which I was like, this is...
Understandably.
Yeah. But it just... This wasn't the Star Trek I knew and loved, because up until this point, Star Trek was bright, it was colourful, it was optimistic, and this sort of took... Obviously, with the exception of the movies, this took Star Trek in a different direction tonally. And it sort of ushered in a new generation of like, hey, Star Trek can be more than just hope. Yeah, it can be dark. It can be hopeful. It can be, it can deliver hope for the future and have bright positivity. But also, this is a universe where things do go wrong and, dark things can happen. And this was like, if you think in the timeline, this was the first introduction into like dark things happening in Star Trek, because before this, before the Dominion War, we had this film and then other things, and this sort of made the Borg, up until that point, which we only saw in the Next Generation, this made the Borg horrifying as an enemy.
I think this is the thing though. After this movie essentially is a horror movie. There is no other way to view this than like you would a thriller or a horror movie, and it's done so perfectly towards that, where it has jump scares, it has like a double dream in it, it has like all of these little tropes of horror movies, and it's so weird that I never remembered it that way. I never remembered that it was done this way. But it's also the fact of this is the Borg at their pinnacle. This is the Borg being the biggest threat the galaxy has ever seen. And obviously, to be critical, it's downhill from here. Like Voyager, I've watched a lot of Voyager lately, and the Borg are just very defanged in that. Whereas this, we kind of go, hey, so essentially, this is what happens when one Borg survives. One Borg teleports over to another ship, and then all of this crazy shit happens. And that's how terrifying and insidious they are. And the fact of when we see how many ships it takes to take out one Borg cube at the beginning, including the Defiant, which is specifically the strongest war machine that the warship that the Federation has. And it puts it in perspective of just going, wow, they are absolutely unstoppable and absolutely terrifying. It's beautiful. It's a proper overcoming the odds film.
Yeah.
I'll give the audience who have possibly not seen it a brief synopsis. So, Star Trek First Contact is the 8th movie in the Star Trek franchise. This is a brand new starship, Enterprise E, and basically the Borg are heading to Sector 001, Earth. Singular Borg cube is heading there, and a massive battle ensues. The cube is destroyed, however, a sphere escapes. They travel back in time to mid-21st century Earth with the hopes of stopping First Contact and assimilating humanity, and therefore the rest of the Alpha and Beta Quadrant. The way the movie opens, like you said, with the double dream, it's nowhere near what Star Trek used to be. This is like horror from the get-go. You have a beautiful opening sequence with Jerry Goldsmith's overture.
Hold
over
on,
the
hold on,
credits.
hold on. I'm going to stop you here because this is where the horror starts, okay, for me. I've written down shit opening sequence. Now, I'm not going to disagree with you much here, but we've done it. Every movie, okay? Every movie, I hate it. When I've been on the Nerdy Up North podcast and we talk about how you do a good title sequence for a movie, this is the epitome of a terrible one. It has nothing to do with the film. It has nothing to do with the Borg. And it literally looks like someone just selected one of the you know, the the pre-made sort of sequences or something, or transitions on like Premiere Pro or something to make the letters come in. The Jerry Goldsmith theme is amazing, but it's this idea of they had a real opportunity to tie the credits into the film and have exposition, like we get in something like Batman Returns, or like we get in some of the previous Trek films. And here it just goes, oh, well, we've got to do this, so let's just slap something together and put it out. And from there, it's perfect, but it's the worst first impression you can get, aside from the music.
It's a very Trek trope to have opening credits like this, though, because we do see it, you know, in a number of the movies. But
it just gets worse as well, because Nemesis is terrible for it as well, and Insurrection has it as well, and you're like, you fuckers.
Well, Nemesis does buck the trend though, because it does have a live action open.
Yeah.
So the credits do play where we were on Baku, but we get past the credits and we just see Picard in a Next Generation uniform in a Borg alcove, and I love this full pullback all the way through this sequence where you go from Picard's eye all the way back to the interior of a Borg cube, and it really gives you a perspective to how big these ships really are. Like, this is just like one center of the Borg cube, and it is absolutely massive. But the whole dream sequence where they're running in and out of the corridors and everything like that, and Picard is you know, hearing voices and he's seeing drones, and then the drill happens.
I have to say how uncomfortable this is, because this is the wonderful thing about the Borg, because there's an innate body horror in the Borg. Like, the idea of they are basically about mutilation, they are about violation. They are a terrifying enemy. And in this film, we get to see all of it. We get to see a guy being mutilated. We get to, like, you know, as he's part of being assimilated. And we get, like you say, this eye sequence, which is, it's the fact that it doesn't allude to it. It doesn't kind of just have the drill moving close to the eye like we have in the picture. You get to see it just as it starts to penetrate the retina, and then it cuts away, and you're like, oh, they went that extra mark, which, yeah, even in 1996, I think is horrible.
But then he wakes up, and you know, he thinks, it was just a dream. It was just a dream. Wakes up, goes to the bathroom to try and wash his face, and then the body horror continues, where we see the little bit of Borg tech just burst out of his skin. And again, for Star Trek, this is such new ground. Like, you never had stuff like this, and it just bursts out. And I remember, like, I was scarred instantly from the eye thing as a kid, because bearing in mind,
how old were you? You're saying it's your first cinema trip.
I was 9 years old.
Were you allowed to see this? Isn't it like a 12? Okay, right, okay. So
I pretended to be older than I was, and I don't think the Odeon Cinema in Middlesbrough gave a shit. But I was 9 years old, so I was already scarred by the eye. And then he gets to the back, because there's a sense of relief. You know, the way it's done, it's like, oh, it's just a dream. There's a relief. And then it jumps back in with the body horror again, with it jumping out of his cheek. Yeah. And then I was scarred again, because it was just like, you see it moving, and it's like that. I was like, oh. Yeah. And then it wakes up again, and like, oh, is this another dream? What's going on? And then we finally realize that, you know,
they could have kept it going. He could have had the next bit where he wakes up, and then like the screen pops up and it's an admiral on the line, but have it as Lecheyev, and he's like, and then wakes up and it's another dream, you know, and just keep it going. You know?
I thought you were dead. But yeah, so he receives information that the Borg have begun an attack on the Federation. Lovely little. Again, I don't care if anyone thinks ship porn is long. I'm here for it. This is a beautiful ship right there. I need to tell you something.
Let's see it.
John
It's
Eves.
Goodwill's ship hour.
John Eves is a wonderful human being. I am proud to call him a friend, which is horrifyingly like crazy. But he designed the Enterprise E, which is this one here. This model
Beautiful.
here, I built with my own hands, wired with my own hands, and it all lights up. But I don't have the batteries at the moment. But this is like, there are certain ships that you fall in love with, and I fell in love with this one. So the whole sequence where we get a little bit of exposition, you know, the Borg are heading for sector 001, and this time there may be no stopping them. And then you get the nice little observations here where Picard is like, there's just
could I just stop you for a moment just to talk before we move on from the ship? When I was in Star Trek Las Vegas, I met a wonderful guy called Scott that we all met up with, who was from Canada, who is from Nice, France. And he was talking about the importance of how cool it was when you got these ship kits like you have there, which you put together yourself, and you get to put the wiring in, you get to put the lights in and stuff like that. And it becomes this labor of love creating the ship, rather than it just being like Hot Toys or whatever, where it's just like, oh, you just bought a fully made model kind of thing.
yeah.
And it's the fact of he had one of Voyager that he made when he was like a young teenager, and that's what he brought with him to STLV to get signed by Kate Mulgrew. And so he's got this model he has from being a kid, like signed by her across the front. I just thought it was the most beautiful thing. And then hearing about, you putting that ship together as a labor of love is like, I think it's really special.
God, yeah.
This is 20 years old. I built this in 2004, and it took a few days, but it was just. I was never good at model making. I was never good at model building, but I fastidiously took my time with this because I loved it so much. And to actually get to meet John Eves, the person who designed it and helped build the model, it was just something special. It's like, they say never meet your heroes, but honestly, John Eves is one of the most nicest human beings you will ever meet. And he was at STLV because Factory Entertainment are releasing a 6-foot Enterprise E model, the one we saw for $25,000. Did you see it?
I don't think I did, and I'm kind of concerned that I missed a 6-foot model.
$25,000 for the Enterprise E, fully lit, all the navigational lights, engines, fully detailed shuttle bay 1 and shuttle bay 2. Absolutely.
Is that the one you showed me?
Yes, it was. Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be tough to explain to the wife or husband, though, isn't it? Like, just be like, "What's that? Where did that come from?" "Oh, I've always had this 6-foot, $25,000 ship."
I won it at a fair.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like it is a beautiful, very beautiful shot. And the one thing that the people behind Star Trek are good at is establishing whenever a new ship is in frame. Now, we had. Sammy joked about it when we first started the motion picture, and we had like the 5-minute long ship porn scene where we saw the Enterprise refit. Whereas this is just like 10 seconds, and it's like, I think this is comparably better than that, because it's just the nebula is beautiful, the ship is beautiful, and you're just getting that lovely bit of music as well as the captain's log. But getting back to the meeting in the observation lounge where Picard is like, there's only one ship, he's heading for sector 001, and the crew are ready to join the fleet, and we're going to take them on, man. And he's like, we're not going. Why? We're the most advanced starship in the fleet. Oh, if they think we should patrol the Romulan neutral zone in case the Romulans decide to take advantage of it. And deep down why Starfleet have done this. They've kept him on the sidelines because he was Locutus, and everyone knows it. Everyone knows it's bullshit, but they go along with it because it's their orders. And when you hear Riker speaking to him later, in the next scene, where he's piping, what was it, Berlioso? That he's piping in? Because that was also played in Legacy Season 3 when Worf was doing his combat Tai Chi. It was the same. It was the same bit of music.
That was a beautiful scene.
fantastic scene. Iron Worf.
Well, it was
son of
another
Metal.
great callback, like it was
Yeah.
just like showing that that he gets it, that he get, when he was doing Picard, he got like, the little references and the little nods that we were going to appreciate.
Terry Matalis is a Star Trek fan, and he's one of us, and it showed all the way through season 3. I love Terry Matalis so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, Riker and Picard are talking, and Riker's just like, "Why are we out here chasing comets?" And Picard explains Starfleet's got every confidence in the Enterprise and her crew, just not her captain. But then we hear word from Deanna that the fleet have engaged the Borg, and again, this is another scene that is done absolutely perfectly, because you get to the bridge, you don't see anything, you just hear the comm chatter from the fleet, and within seconds this massive armada is being decimated by this one singular Borg cube. And bear in mind, this is a fleet that was rebuilt after Wolf 359 specifically to take on the Borg, and they are just being cut like hot knife through butter.
But this is the thing, like, I mentioned it earlier, but like the whole thing of Lecheyev is like, hey, I'm the expert on the Borg, and you're like, how? What experience have you had with them? Like, this is literally the second cube to enter, the Alpha Quadrant, as far as we know.
It's literally on Earth's doorstep. That's they cannot stop this cube, and it's to the point where it's on Earth's doorstep, and we hear the comm chatter, and you just hear like ships exploding, people dying, screaming, utter chaos in this battle. I love the way it affects Picard, though, because Picard is hearing it from both sides of the fence. He's hearing it from the Borg, and he's also hearing the comm chatter. And the way Patrick Stewart plays this all the way through, he is literally Captain Ahab to a point. Captain Ahab with PTSD. And the way he just mutes the audio, and he's just like, right, set course to Sector 001. Data being data. Absolute data moment. I speak for everyone when I'm like, to hell with our orders, and they just leg it to Sector 001. But the whole battle with the Borg cube, it's like
beautiful.
It's how Wolf 359 should have been, where Starfleet's on the losing foot, and these are all brand new ships, and they're just being tore apart. But we just see Worf in the Defiant, and the Defiant is just literally falling apart around him, and he's just smacking it. And poor Adam Scott, who is a hardcore Star Trek fan, who got that role because he's a hardcore Star Trek fan, and he's just like, main weapons have gone, this is our structural integrity is losing. And Worf's just like, perhaps today is a good day to die.
And then he's like, let's ram them. And you're like, wow.
Adam Scott's just like, oh. Maybe the escape
Guess I'll die then.
But yeah, I mean, because it was the first time we saw the Defiant outside of DS9 as well, so it was a nice little cameo.
Well, I think the wonderful thing about this is it has callbacks to everything. I think the biggest problem with a lot of the films is that they're isolated. It just goes, hey, this is just TNG. Hey, this is just original series kind of thing. And then Generations and this, I'd say, are the exceptions, because I don't think any of the ones afterwards really involve Voyager or DS9 at all. But
Nemesis.
Does it?
Yeah.
What?
Admiral Janeway,
right?
Oh, yeah, okay, touche. But, okay, my point is bollocks. But yeah, just writing that down in my hand for later. But yeah, with this, though, we get an amazing cameo from the Doctor. We get the Defiant from DS9. It's a shame that the Defiant's on the back foot, but it's the fact of you can see that it's trying to do its best and whatnot. And it's great that they find a way to go, hey, we can't have this without Worf. How do we get Worf back here from DS9? And it's like, oh, he's piloting the Defiant because Cisco's off elsewhere, and therefore it gets damaged, and therefore they teleport him off. And then they go, hey, well, while you're here, be a member of the crew again. And you're like, it's beautiful writing. It's really, really well done that nothing feels forced in this. Nothing feels like it doesn't naturally fit in the place. Like, even the insane scene in the holodeck is just nuts. Like, that did not need to be there, and yet it totally fits. It's like, that's what Next Gen does, and it works, and it's good writing.
it's
They
good,
still
right?
brought some. They
Sorry,
still
go on.
Yeah.
brought some humor too, right? Because you got Riker saying dwarf. You still remember how to fire phasers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tough
It,
little ship. Little.
that's it. Although I have written down how actually I made two notes about this section. Okay, one of them is how tiny the Defiant is in context against the Enterprise, because you never get to
Minuscule.
see that in DS9. In DS9, the Defiant always looks like it's the same size as every other ship, and in this, you get to see the Enterprise next to it, and you're like, oh, it is actually tiny.
I actually have a scale model of the Defiant, which is exactly the same scale as that.
Yeah.
And like I could get up and show you it, but I don't think anyone will be that bothered. But
That's it.
it's
Um,
but no, so like
Oh, and the other point I had about this is the new lieutenant on the bridge, Hawk,
Hawk.
looks like a sentient loaf of bread. Yeah, those are my two notes for this entire section.
Um but it is interesting because, after the best of both worlds, after World 359, Starfleet was rebuilding and they were doing, we need to build more warships and have anti-Borg ships, basically ships that are designed to take on the Borg, ships that are harder and able to take on the Borg. And you see this new fleet in action and they are just being ripped to shreds. And it is only through the interference of Picard, who had to disobey a direct order to get there. So, Starfleet ordering him away from the battle would have been to the detriment of the entire Federation. So it was only Picard that could have saved them all, and he did, because when the Admiral's ship is destroyed, he takes command and he's like, you need to target all your weapons, the entire fleet, target weapons on this specific location. And even Data goes, that's not really a critical system. And Picard just goes, trust me. And what I love is like they show a little clip of the ships because everyone's on standby waiting for Picard to say fire, and these ships are not firing and they are being fired upon.
Yeah,
And it's like they are waiting and dying for your order. And when they do, and they just blow the fuck out of this cube, it's fantastic because you see like someone with intimate knowledge of this cube directs the entire fleet. They destroy this cube with one mighty explosion. So much so that you actually see ships exploding trying to run away. Also, by the way, did any of you two notice a little cameo in this scene?
Did.
You did.
what?
The Millennium Falcon is in the battle.
What? I
So-
genuinely have not seen this.
So, ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, do the special effects for Star Trek.
Yeah.
In the Battle of Sector 001, as the Borg ship is exploding, there is a Millennium Falcon legging it away from the explosion.
Do you reckon they got permission for that? Like,
No.
they're like,
If it
oh
was-
well, no
if it
one's
was
going to
Disney-
notice this until
if
a
it was
weird
Disney, there'd be-
podcast from the north in 2024, so it's fine.
Yes, Sammy, yep, Millennium Falcon. Also, fun fact, Star Trek 09, R2-D2 is in the debris. So, so
This
The
means
Borg
Jake has to watch this because it's now Star Wars.
oh, but he doesn't care about anything. So the cube explodes. The sphere, the Borg sphere escapes and makes its way to Earth.
Also, we've never seen this before.
Nope.
We have never seen a Borg sphere before. So this is something where no one is expecting this. Like everyone is just like, what the hell is this? It's effectively like an escape
like an
pod,
escape shuttle,
really.
yeah.
But it's the fact of like this is the first time that we've seen a different kind of Borg vessel, because obviously Voyager we get like different things and whatnot. This is effectively, why isn't it a cube? Okay, this is
Yeah.
going against the grain, and that's something exciting about it because there's something very special inside this sphere as we find out.
Well, the sphere initiates a temporal wormhole, and as it's approaching Earth, travels into this temporal wormhole and captures the Enterprise. And as the Enterprise is trying to figure out what's going on, Earth changes. And again, this is another, like, not horrifying, but kind of horrifying image because Earth itself changes and there is no water and everything's very metallic. And when they scan it, they go, oh, there is 9 billion inhabitants, all Borg.
Yeah.
And that's when they
It's-
realize...
It's terrifying. It's that fact of obviously, so what's happened is the Borg sphere has gone back in time and the Enterprise is trapped in its temporal wake, so it's being sucked in after it. But there's enough time just to. We don't have time to argue about time.
No, it's not
There's enough
time.
time for them to see what actually happened, what has actually happened with the galaxy because of the Borg going back. So they get to see what their mission effectively is,
Yeah.
just as they're sucked in afterwards, and they get a chance to actually change things around. But it's a really terrifying thing. It's like a Terminator 2 thing. It's kind of
Yeah.
like seeing the future because of what someone's done in the past.
Yeah.
It's fantastic because when they travel back, when they go back in time, the whole movie then shifts to a rural bar. And you don't know when it is, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But you just see two people leaving a bar, one of them incredibly drunk. And yeah, so they leave the when they're leaving the bar, and you just hear like one of them go, "Z Z Z, you're not going up in that thing drunk," and he's like, "Well, I'm sure as hell not going up there sober." And then when they're looking up, and she like, and the woman goes, "What is that over there?" And he's like, "That's the constellation Leo." And she's like, "No, that." And it's just like this thing just in the sky, and next thing the settlement is attacked by it. Yeah. And I love this because again, this is Star Trek. They could have explained, because she says, "Oh, is this an ETA? Is this an ETA? ECAR, ETA,
E-car, I think, yeah.
ECAR or something like that." And he goes, "After all these years, no one knows what the hell they're going on about." And
Yeah, I didn't.
It's
get that.
such a thing, but it's obviously. I'll explain when the Enterprise comes back. So yeah, the settlement is getting absolutely blown to bits.
Also, I'm kind of disappointed that these are kind of puny weapons. Like, you're literally going,
Yeah.
this is a Borg sphere, which has like, I don't know, like if you fired something from space and it got all the way to Earth, you would expect like a massive explosion. And then these are like little,
Pew
fireworks
pews.
going off. But to be fair, it would not be much of a film if they literally just fired one shot and obliterated the entire site. You'd be like, okay, well, that was a
So
successful mission.
as the Borg is firing upon this settlement, the Enterprise E comes out of the temporal vortex, sees that they are shooting at the surface, and decides to unleash a couple of quantum torpedoes right up their exhaust hole. Their sensors are down, and their shields are down. So they do the next best thing: they just blow up the Borg sphere. They realize they were targeting the surface. They find out that he was targeting a missile complex in central Montana. And that's when things start to fall into place. Picard asks, "What's the date?"
And here's the thing, though. I wondered, how the hell did they manage to blow up the sphere so easily? Like, the sphere has no shields or anything, but then I kind of go, oh, maybe they deliberately had their shields
Yeah.
down so that they could teleport, so that they could transport. And I'm just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But
Use the
yeah.
Enterprise's 24th century technology to bring Borg from the 21st or 21st century over and adapt and take over the galaxy a little bit easier with 24th century tech. But yeah, so data confirms that they have arrived roughly 10 years after the Third World War, which is so cheery and delightful. Most of the major cities are destroyed, 600 million dead, few governments, little resistance, hence the pun. They get an exact date of April the 4th, 2063, the day before first contact. So they allude that the Borg were here to stop first contact with the Vulcans. So they realise that the Borg were firing at the missile complex, so they must go down there because they can't detect what's gone on, what's happened. So Picard and the normal away team beam down to see that the place is an absolute wreck.
Yeah.
And they go to
That's just Montana, though, isn't
That's
it?
just Montana, yeah. But they go to the missile complex. The complex is absolutely destroyed. Everyone's dead. I love the bit though.
Well, do they know at this point? Because Picard basically goes, "Oh, I know what year this is." Like when they check what date it is, they're like, "Oh, we know exactly what's happening here." And therefore, when they get to the actual settlement and they see all the dead bodies, there's very much this fear of going, "Oh, this is the day before first contact. One of these dead bodies could be Zephram Cochrane, which would basically fuck up all of history." And it's quite scary, where they're just like, wow, have we already lost?
Here is another tidbit though. the original script for First Contact had Cochrane dying and Jean-Luc
Wow.
Picard taking his place. Sort
Isn't
of
that the
gave
Bell
you-
Riots, though?
Bell
gave
Riots.
you
Yeah,
the
that's it. I was just like, they're like,
syndrome.
hang
Yeah.
on, we're going to do that later on. you
So
know?
it was sort of scrapped, but yeah, it would have been Picard, Riker, and Geordi breaking the warp barrier and initiating First Contact, pretending to be Zevran Cochrane.
Yeah.
But luckily that was scrapped because we got James Cromwell. So yeah, they get down there. They find that the entire crew of the missile facility are dead. So they go and check the missile. I love this bit though because as they are examining the missile, you see Lily. We don't know who's Lily, but we see her with the gun at the bottom, and she's firing at them. And she's because like, don't fire, we're here to help you. Bullshit, and just starts shooting at them. I love how Data just like drops
Well,
all the way down.
I love it though.
Yeah.
She's shooting at them with like a submachine gun or something.
Yeah,
And then Data's like, oh, I will handle this. And basically what he means is he just steps off the platform like about 50 feet up,
yeah.
falls all the way down and just lands on his feet perfectly fine, and then comes after it. And the one thing I will say about Lily, because like my criticism of this movie ages ago is every time I've seen this previously, I've been a bit bothered by Lily and the sort of the past elements in it. Like I didn't think they gelled that much, but then watching it this time, I'm like, no, it works perfectly. And Lily is so good as a character because she just has this constant shocked face. Like her shocked face is one of the best things I've ever seen of just like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is going on? You know, and it's perfect for the idea of someone who is just faced with this insanity into their everyday life. And in this scene here, where she just looking at Data, just being like, what the hell? And she opens fire on him, shoots him in the back loads until she runs out of bullets. And then he just turns around, looks at himself, looks at her, and he's like, greetings, and then starts walking towards her. And she just immediately, she doesn't just faint there, she turns to walk away and then just faints. And it's perfect. It's you know, it's a perfect reaction to just, yeah, you've just met an android. You know?
I love it because this is the prelude to when things start to go sour. So we know that Lily's got theta radiation poisoning, so Crusher beams her up to the Enterprise to treat her, and obviously inoculates everyone. They go up to sickbay.
I feel a bit sorry for Crusher here because if you think about it, regardless of what happens in the rest
Very
of the
little
film,
role.
this is, I don't know, because what I was saying, because me and actually Charles Royale, who's in the chat, hey,
Yeah.
Charles Royale, we watched this together on Wednesday, I think it was. We watched this together, so it was great getting his opinions into this film as well, which was fascinating. But it's the fact of, like, I think Crusher gets used a lot more in this movie than Troy. Troy literally has the Uhura in the original like films where you just like they don't know what to do with her, so they just put her in some stuff and she's out the way. Same a bit like with Geordie. Whereas in this one, like Crusher does get a bit of a bigger role, but she's still not center stage, I think. But it's a shame though that in the context of this mission, they're getting to see First Contact. And she has to miss all of it because she has to go back to work, essentially. So she's on the planet literally looking like a sort of, I don't know. She looks like she should be in the X-Files or something. She looks absolutely badass in a like human costume, in a sort of, 20th century costume. And then basically she's just like, oh, well, I guess I don't get to see Zeppelin Cochrane anymore because I've got to go back to the Enterprise and get back to work. And it feels a bit of a shame that that has to happen to her.
We do see, the first instance of in this movie, Geordie without a visor.
Yeah, and no one brings it up. No
Why
one,
should
no
they?
one talks about it, but that's what's cool. It doesn't kind of go, "Hey, we need to explain this to the audience." They just go like, "Yeah, he's got new eyes."
Yeah,
and
ocular implant.
and it's great, rather than making a big song and dance out of it.
So we see Geordie again, where he has to come down. The Phoenix has been damaged, so he has to take an away team down to try and fix the Phoenix before the launch. And then he alludes that engineering is extremely hot, so there may be an issue with the environmental controls. I love this other scene though with Picard and Data where they're going around the missile, because this was what I loved about this, they actually shot a real decommissioned nuclear missile. That's where they filmed. It's an
Really?
actual Titan missile silo that they used.
Cool.
So
That's
it's a
crazy.
real silo, real decommissioned missile, and all they did, they just put the they get the cockpit at the top, so they like encased it with like a cockpit frame. And I love this because you see Picard living his childhood fantasy of actually touching the Phoenix, because he says he's seen it hundreds of times in the Smithsonian, but you can never be able to touch it. And he alludes to Data that physical touch can bring you closer to an object like nothing else can.
Which is wonderful foreshadowing for the rest of the movie, I think.
It really is. And then we see one of the few instances of Deanna where she goes, "We can't find Dr. Cochrane, and we must assume that he has died." And again,
But this is the hilarious thing, because this basically is all playing on what they're expecting Cochrane to be like. Because basically she's like, "Hey, we've looked around the entire complex. We can't find him anywhere, so he must be dead because he wouldn't leave the complex during this time because he was obsessed with his work." Whereas the reality is that's totally wrong. He's getting drunk in a bar outside, and it's like,
Yeah.
and it's them assuming this about him, and then when they go outside, they're like, "Oh no, he's here." Okay, cool.
but it's a case of this movie's an entire case of like rose tinted glasses for your heroes. Like,
Yeah.
oh, he broke the warp barrier. He was an obsessed physicist. He had a dream
He's a
to usher
genius.
in new peace.
Yeah.
And he's just like, nah.
He's a drunk. He's
He was
a drunk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a drunk. He was doing it for money. That's like the twist at the end, effectively. But I think that is the prevailing theme of the movie, though, where it's the fact of we have like Picard sinking lower to get his revenge and sort of like giving up his morality a little bit and kind of losing a bit of himself in the Ahab kind of like vengeance that he's going for. And yet we have like Cochrane basically rising up to go, "I don't want that future. I don't want that responsibility in history." But then kind of rising up to go, "I will embrace this. I will do this thing because it's so important." And I quite like that. And then Data also having a journey of discovery of going, what does he actually want? And it's three parallel stories, I think.
Yeah.
The scene with the two engineers, the man and the woman.
It's Sammy. This scene, is this just a horror film? Is this just plain horror? This whole scene, where literally it has like him going into the shaft, and then you see a silhouette on a wall, a shadow on a wall, and then of like a Borg arm. It's so it's so perfect.
And then the scream as well. It's a very Hollywood horror scream. And she does it so well because the way she portrays the fear in her eyes is absolutely fantastic. But the way that Picard senses it down on the planet, and he hails the Enterprise, and Worf goes, "Oh well, everything seems to be fine. We've just had a few environmental issues," and Picard knows.
Yeah.
And he's as Worf is explaining like what type of issues he's got, like Picard says nothing. He doesn't allude to it to the ground team that something may be wrong, but he's just like, "Me and Data are beaming up. Riker, you're in charge."
I like how fast he works it out, because obviously he kind of has this sensing of the Borg. He can hear things, and you don't know that he's hearing actual specific stuff, but it's more the idea of him going, "We blew up the Borg ship. The only possible explanation for where they could be is the Enterprise," and then immediately goes, "Oh, okay, fuck," and I just love this. And I love that he just goes with it. Like he immediately goes, "Hey, this is how serious this is. We need to go and check this," even though everyone else is like, "Oh, it'll be fine. It'll just be, environmental controls playing up kind of thing." Because they'd be buggered if he hadn't have played to his intuition here.
Yeah, because when he beams up, he wants to know exactly what the conditions were on deck 16, where the issues are fluctuating, and the temperature was like 39.1 degrees Celsius, and he goes, "Exactly like a Borg ship." They knew their ship was doomed. They beamed over without us knowing. They'll take over the Enterprise and then Earth.
And honestly, this was a big surprise. I didn't realize Borg ships would be that hot. I always imagined them as being really cold.
It's.
I suppose there's a lot of like mechanical stuff, and there's a lot of, it would be like a boiler room, I guess, like in terms of just the amount of air, things, like things working or whatever, like machinery working.
Yeah,
But
but
I always assumed they would be cold.
but why would
Yeah.
they adjust the temperature on the Enterprise then if that was the case? You know what I mean? It's a very odd.
It must be
Unless they
something to do
work
with the
better.
organic components. Like,
Yeah,
because it could be something like maybe it helps the assimilation process in terms of
perhaps.
sort of
Yeah,
like, nanobots need warmth, or I don't know. There's loads of
yeah.
science stuff you could throw in there.
So yeah, back on the back on the planet. One of my most favorite scenes in the bar. I absolutely love this because we just see Deanna just like there's Roy Orbison playing in the background, and Deanna just sat there just slumped, and I'm just like, oh, that's me on a Friday. And you see Riker in the background, he's just like shouting at her. So he pulls the plug out of the jukebox and immediately starts to get bottled by Cochrane. And he's like, who is this jerk? Who told me he can turn off my music? He's like, Will Riker, Stephen Cochrane. Is he a friend of yours? Yes. Husband? No. Good.
It is. There's really something because like Zephyr Cochrane is an absolute dickhead, but then that it kind of is really endearing. Like he's played so fantastically that they just went, hey, this is not the guy that you expect in your history books, which is probably the reality of stuff. Like we look back on famous historical figures and we're like, they were probably into feet porn. Okay. But
Here's the thing though. Here is the thing. Zephyr Cochrane, around about this time, is in his mid-30s.
Wow. Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
The excuse that they've used, because obviously James Cromwell was a lot older, but the excuse that they used was years of radiation. Montana and years of exposed radiation exposure has caused his skin to like weather, which I thought was like a nice little explanation. It's basic.
Is that a retrospective canon? Like, is that like they cast the film and then later on something came out saying he was 30 at this point and they were like,
no, it's he was a perfect fit. James Cromwell was a perfect fit for Cochrane.
Yeah.
There was a book that came out about 10 years ago. It was the Federation, the first 150 years, as narrated by Hikaru Sulu, president of the Federation. And it just basically explained that Cochrane was in his mid-30s, but due to years of radiation exposure after World War III, it caused him to age prematurely. So he got a weather look, sort of like what happens if you smoke a lot, you age prematurely. And I thought it's a great thing to explain, like, why is he 36 but look 50? Do you know? So it was a great little explanation to that. But this scene,
also World War III has just finished. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people got aged by that. I think.
Well, I mean, we had 14 years of the Conservatives, so we've aged eternally.
I'm actually 15.
I've worked 2 years on a movie set. I've more than it was 2 years ago.
But I love this whole thing where he's just drinking. He doesn't care about the Phoenix. He's just drinking. And he's like, to the Phoenix, may she rest in peace. And Riker's trying to explain, and Cochrane's like, shh. And the way they just drink is like, to the Phoenix, may she rest in peace. And he's like, okay, that's not so good, and just throws the bottle.
I love it. He gets out. He's so drunk. He gets out a bottle and then pours a massive glass for Diana, a massive glass for himself, and then he's just like, "This is the good stuff." And then they both drink it down. And then obviously it's disgusting, and he just throws it away, be like, okay, maybe that wasn't the good stuff. But I do love though how fucked like Troy is, because she's been having Synthahol for like decades, and then this is actual real human liquor.
It's the way crazy. Like she explains to Riker, she's just like, it took 3 shots of something called tequila to find out he was the man I was looking for. And I've just spent the last half an hour trying to keep his hands off me. So don't go criticizing my counseling techniques. And I love that, like, the way that these two play off at each other in this movie, like in this scene, it's fantastic because she's like, it's a primitive culture. I'm just trying to blend in. And he's just like, you're blended all right. And it's the way, it's the way they do it.
It's the wonderful little endearing relationship between Troy and Riker, I think. And it's done wonderfully in this scene.
She has such the personality. I've met her in person. She's got quite the personality. Like she pulled this off amazingly well.
It was the time that It was the bit where when we were in STLV and she said the C word. And I
Yeah.
was just like, Marina Sirtis has just said the C word in front of us. I will never wash these ears again. It was brilliant. She is a wonderful human being, but obviously she just does not mince words
There
at
is
all.
no
No.
filter at all, and she is
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful for it.
Yeah. I was wearing a
Um,
Superman. I was wearing a Superman shirt, and she asked, "Are those pecs of yours real or not?" Like I laughed so hard.
so yeah, so so you're like, oh, the famous line as well. Time. This isn't. Oh yeah, because Riker goes. We should really like forgo the Prime Directive and tell them what's going on. We don't have the time. She's like, time. Don't. I heard me about time. We don't have the time.
We don't have the time to talk about it. It's a terrible line, but it's delivered so unashamedly, and you're just going, yeah, you can tell that they were very proud of this line, and well done to them because it's
On
fun,
the way he
Yeah.
plugs the jukebox back in, and he just starts dancing, and Riker like starts to do a little bop, and just Troy just goes slaps on the floor. Absolutely love it. The sick bay scene I loved because it was a redress of the Voyager set. So Crusher, brings Lily back into consciousness, and Lily's naturally, what the fuck's going on? And you do see the nurse from the Next Generation, who's
We get Nurse
recently-
Ogawa.
Nurse Ogawa.
I've written it down. I've got it in capitals in my notes. Nurse Ogawa.
May she rest in peace,
in
bless
peace.
her.
Yeah, rest
Yeah.
in peace. Me and Charles cheered when Nurse Ogawa
Yeah.
appeared, and the fact that she was in the previous movie, she was in Generations, but in this she actually gets time. She gets way more screen time, and I love it.
And how they use the EMH as a distraction to get away from the Borg trying to break through to the sick bay as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, and it's the way to tie Voyager in. So basically, yeah, the Borg are basically trying to break through the door. So she wakes up Lily. They all escape through into
Jeffrey's
what do
tube.
they go into the Jeffrey's tubes, and then basically the EMH, like played by the Doctor, is basically just left to sort of distract the Borg for a bit
Doctor,
before
there's a
they realize
doorstep.
yeah, before they realize he's a hologram, and it's. It's just like, I've heard that Borg implants can lead to skin irritation. Why don't you?
Perhaps you were like an analgesic cream.
And then just the little twist. It's how Robert Picardo is so fantastic. Like, it's just this idea of he manages to eat the scenery in the 2 shots he's in the film. I think is very impressive.
We also missed a scene with the briefing with the Starfleet officers where Picard's like, they've set up a base camp in engineering. That's their central hive. The Borg cannot operate without a central hive. The easiest way to take them out is to enter engineering and burst one of the coolant tanks because it will dissolve any organic matter that it comes into contact with.
Yeah.
And again, a nice bit of exposition from Worf where he goes, I've adapted the rifles. We may be able to get 12 shots at most. And again, later on, 12 shots can be heard.
This is how terrifying the Borg are, though. Like, it's the fact of literally all of the weapons they have are useless because the Borg adapt so quickly. Yeah. And this is what gets scary when Voyager just kind of ignores this, where Voyager just goes, oh, yeah, we can just shoot them kind of thing. And it's, but this is genuinely terrifying that you're like, yeah, you can't just shoot your way out. Like, and the longer they leave it, the more people are getting assimilated. It's very, the tension is real.
The whole scene on deck 16 when they're making their way down to engineering as well, the tension that gets built up in here, because again, this is something that Star Trek had not done up until this point, and that the TV shows try to reproduce and just could not do it. The tension that builds up as they make their way through deck 16, and then they get to the corridor where you see like all the conduits are being ripped out and being adapted by the Borg, and Data's like, I'm feeling anxiety. This is an intrigue and emotion. One of which, in Picard goes, Data, maybe you should just turn off your emotion chip for now.
Which is perfect writing because it foreshadows stuff later. Like, this is the whole thing. This is what I hope, like, Sammy got, where it's this idea of, it's going, hey, look, there's holograms. Hey, look, there's Data has an emotion chip that they can turn off and on kind of thing. Hey, look, the Borg work like this. And it's stuff that, we all know, but it has these tiny little nods that tell the audience about it so that it can use it later on. And that's just perfect writing.
But it's the way that Picard just says to him, just off cuff, Data, there are times in which I envy you.
Yeah.
And it is good because, you know, Data is the one that envies the humans for their humanity. And sometimes the ability to just shut off your emotions by the flick of a switch is something that most humans wish that they could do in certain situations. When they're making their way down, though, and you just see the Borg are there, like the shadows of Borg walking past.
The first shots of drones, the first shot of a
Yes.
drone is it's a very sort of innocent scene, but then it does a close up on them, and you're just like, wow, they look horrible in film quality,
And the
as
way,
in scary.
but what makes
Well,
it
that
terrifying? Yeah,
that black door, when all you see is the red lasers coming at you. That scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
When they encounter the drones, when they go, don't fire, they'll ignore us unless they see us as a threat as well. And again, the fear that these are drones that can just kill you within seconds or assimilate you within seconds, and you must walk past them calmly so they don't get provoked as well. It's a terrifying, tension building scene. And what I love is, like, they rendezvous with Worf, who's in the other fire team, and they get there to engineering. And Picard's like, to Data, the manual release. And I love this because, bless poor Data, he is so unintentionally strong that he doesn't realise it sometimes. And when they get the manual release and he just literally pulls the handle off, and Picard just goes, perhaps we should have just knocked.
Just knock.
But that's when
Great
shit
humor.
starts. Yeah, but when shit starts to go south in that, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's a great scene.
It's a great fight. It's this idea of like this is the whole, you amp it up for the movie and it does it well without losing what it is to be Trek, I think.
Yeah.
And we see, like, they fire the 12 shots. Worf confirms that they've adapted, so they have to use hand-to-hand combat. And you just see Data breaking the necks of Borg drones before he is, like, he saves Picard, breaks the neck of a Borg drone, and then he's pulled under the doors by two other drones, and then just like pulled back. And again, it's another horror trope that we see where the door opens slightly and he's just pulled in swiftly by his legs. And it's absolutely, it's horrifying.
Scary.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrifying. And it's just,
I think then the next bit that's horrifying after this is where a guy gets assimilated. So we actually get to see a guy getting injected, getting
straight in the
assimilated. And as Picard said in the briefing, hey, if you see anyone get assimilated, kill them. Like,
Yeah,
and
he
it's
does.
terrifying. It's
And he
it's
does
genuinely
that.
terrifying that it's like we've seen that people can be de-assimilated. Like that's what happened with Picard, with Locutus. But I think Picard is basically going, hey, I have never actually recovered from that. Like we kind of in the episodes we see, oh look, it looks like he's fine now, but this is hammering home the fact of going, no, he still has Borg technology in his body. He still has these nightmares and whatnot. And it's this idea of going, he's basically going, look, death is actually preferable to that. And
Yeah.
so therefore and also in the moment they're like going, hey, we can't have any more drones appearing because of how tough they are. So effectively, yeah, this poor guy is begging for Picard
But
to
we
help
see-
him, and Picard just kills him.
But we also see that his way of thinking is pulled up by Lily partway through the film. And when he sees like, the way, because we see him being injected in the neck, that again, as a 9-year-old, fucking terrifying. Because the way that the drone reacts, because obviously there's just no emotion, he's just head, neck, inject, dump.
Yeah.
And he moves on to the next one. And it's just like, it's horrifying to watch as a kid.
Yeah.
It's really, this is, I'm gonna go totally off topic. This is like what do we call a tangent now? There is a video game that I love that I occasionally stream on Twitch called XCOM Terror from the Deep, which is a strategy game. And there's a monster in it called the Tentaculat, which is basically like a big brain thing. But what it does is if it gets to your teammates and touches them, then it turns them into like zombies. And then when you destroy the zombie, it basically turns into another one of them. So it has this terrifying knock-on effect. If one person gets infected, then the entire game can be over for you very, very quickly because you have to kill that, then you have to kill the thing that comes out of it, and it's very scary. And I think that's related to the Borg in terms of this idea of like how quickly it can escalate and how simple it is for them to infect you. It's not a case of they have to like hold you for a certain period of time or they have to do a special kind of procedure. They literally just need to walk past you and inject you and you are fucked. And that is singularly terrifying. Like the idea of, and I think unlike other stuff where you have characters who have like plot armor and stuff like that, where they kind of go, oh, well, I managed to dodge everything, kind of thing. I think Star Trek is very much like going, no, we just make sure that we don't have people getting that close. Like we have the hand to hand, but we never actually see the drone managing to go in for that kind of attack.
But we see like the officer on the deck with the holes in his neck begging Picard for help, reaching out like, Captain, help. And Picard just shoots him because he knows that is that is not, he's not enjoying it. It is a mercy. It is a mercy killing because being dead is preferable to being a Borg drone. And when he escapes into the Jeffries tube, immediately he's twatted by Lily, who is there.
Because she escaped, basically. She just escaped, abandoned Crusher. And obviously Crusher, not really giving a shit about anything, basically just went, oh, she's gone. Oh, well, never mind. No, she calls Worf up later and she just goes like, hey, she's somewhere on the ship. She's escaped us. You have to go and find her. She has no idea what's going on with anything. And and then we get this great scene with her and Picard where she genuinely thinks that Picard is like one of the terrorists that are trying to sort of attack them, like the people that they had the ceasefire, the Eastern Coalition.
World War III was essentially the West versus the East.
Because she doesn't realize that she's on a spaceship. Because she got teleported while she was unconscious. She literally thinks she's just in some kind of underground base. And so this whole scene is Picard going, I don't think you understand what's going on.
So he's like, follow me, and then we get the first bit of Data and the Queen. We don't see her just yet, but we see he's strapped to a table in main engineering, and he's like, an imperfect being created by an imperfect being. Alice Krieg, may she... Oh, absolutely beautiful.
Have we lost Alice Krieg?
I don't think we've lost Alice Krieg.
No, we haven't lost her. No, she's still alive and kicking.
The other Borg Queen from season 2 of Picard sadly passed away. But Alice Krieg, may she forever be the Borg Queen, because this movie, I mean, I really feel sorry for the actor, because she went through a lot in this movie for this role. And she deserved far more awards than what she actually got. But this scene, it's just like an imperfect being created by an imperfect being. Luckily, we have ways. And when you just see, again, more body horror, albeit for an android.
We don't get to see that bit yet. We don't get to see that bit because it's the next scene. Because this scene, we just see Data tied up effectively on some kind of med table. And we just hear her voice. And we get to hear the first instance of a Borg saying "I," and it strikes you because you just go, "Hang on, what the fuck is this? This isn't the voice that we've had before." Like, once you've seen Voyager, you get used to the idea of the Borg Queen and stuff. But before this, all we had was that, that collective robotic voice that the Borg sort of like puts out. That was the only sort of like, like personality they had, and yet here's something inside the Borg collective that's an individual, and it's terrifying and chilling at the same time, I think.
But right at the end of this scene, like I said, with the body horror, you see the drills again going into the side of Data's skull, and again, this is just Star Trek breaking new ground and teetering close to that horror alien-esque way, and it's absolutely fine. But then again, we
had the crew we actually had our first shots of the crew being assimilated, their arms replaced with cybernetics.
It's horrible.
This
is something I want to talk about quickly, about the fact of Trek. Obviously, Trek is all about the politics. It's about the people and the emotions and stuff. It doesn't go into like the specifics of stuff that much, like horror. But there's something to be said about how awful the Borg are, like just how brutal they are as a race. Because like obviously we have the technology is amazing in the future kind of thing, and we have amazing doctors like McCoy, Bashir, the Doctor. Uh, that's it. That's it. Phlox. Can't think of any others, but Nursagawa. These amazing medic. Oh,
Benga.
Umbenga, obviously Umbenga, and obviously I've totally forgotten the name. Pulaski. These amazing doctors, but obviously, I don't think I missed anyone out there. Yeah, where they are. Sorry, it's a trope now. But it's the fact of like where they can replace stuff, but does it bring it back? Because effectively, we have it where Locutus, when Picard gets turned into Locutus, he gets mutilated. He gets an arm cut off and replaced with something else. He gets an eye gorged out and then replaced with something else. And afterwards, they go, "Hey, cool, we've repaired the damage and stuff." I'm like, with what? Is that like a fake eye? Have they grown a hand for you? Have they grafted on? Does that feel different? Like, do you ever feel normal again after that kind of thing happening? And there is something terrifying that it doesn't ever really properly go into the idea of being de-assimilated and being like, do you ever feel fully like whole again after that? And that's the stuff that gives me nightmares. That's the thing that I take away from it, being like, I don't think I would like to have a limb cut off, even if they could replace it, with high technology, because you wonder if there'd always be a disconnect, or you'd always know that that was a new limb that was grown as a replacement or whatnot.
The phantom pain, as they call it.
Yeah, that's it. And that is what scares me about the Borg. Not the idea of being assimilated and being part of the collective, but the idea of being saved from it. And I think that is part of Picard's judgment when he does just go, look, if someone starts getting assimilated, just kill them. It's better.
Yeah. Back down on the planet, Riker, LaForge, and Troy are speaking to a rather slightly more sober Dr. Cochrane, explaining what's going on, and Cochrane is just not believing their bullshit whatsoever. And he's like, "Oh, so let me get this straight. You're from the future. The race of cybernetic beings are here to destroy the world, and you're here to stop them." And blah 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 blah. And they're just like, "Yes."
Yeah. You're her out.
Yeah. And they know that they're trying to skirt the Prime Directive. They don't want to violate the Prime Directive as much as they can. But at the end, they have to just give up, and they go, you have to make this warp flight, because when you do, everything starts to change. Disease, war, hunger, all eradicated within 50 years. You usher in a new era of peace, an alien race that is, surveying the system, detects the warp signature. And he goes, "Oh, more bad guys? No, good guys. They're on a survey mission. They've got no interest in Earth. Too primitive." And Cochrane's just like, "Oh." Yeah. But they shift course and make contact right here. Here? Well, actually, over there. And I love the writing in this scene. But basically, they convince Cochrane to continue with his warp flight tomorrow. And I love the fact he goes, "So you guys are some kind of astronaut, you guys are astronauts on some kind of Star Trek." And I'm like, the first time the word Star Trek, I think it's the only time the word Star Trek have been used in the Star Trek universe. And I'm like, what a very odd thing for someone to actually say as well. Like, you say Trek through the stars or something like that, wouldn't you?
But I think that's it. I think there's something wonderful about it, though.
Yeah.
So they convince Cochrane in the way that he's just like, ugh, why not?
Why not?
Back on the Enterprise, I'm just trying to find my notes. There we go. Back on the Enterprise, we've got Picard and Lily going through the Jeffries tubes. She's well and truly in control. She's got the phaser. And he's like, "Why did you fight? Why did you break the ceasefire? We didn't do it." "Well, who did?" And he's like, again, Picard is trying not to exactly. Picard's trying not to break the, where's mine?
Hey.
Oh, wait, no, those are digestives, never mind.
White chocolate digestives.
But I think we know who the winner here is.
I've got a pack of biscuits, very bottom.
You've got toys, I've got McVitie's.
So it's, again, Picard is trying not to like break the Prime Directive per se. And he's like, there is a new faction that wants to stop your launch, and he's like, this is going to be hard for you to believe. And when he shows, like, when he opens up the porthole, and she's just like, what is this? And he's just like, Australia, New Guinea, Ceylons. And he's like, oh, I'm not in Montana anymore. And I'm like, oh, very Alice in Wonderland. But yeah, so go on.
I love that he opens up the window effectively so that she can actually see how far away from Earth she is. And then she kind of just realizes, and you can see her like sort of crumble a little bit and be like, oh, okay. I am well out of my depth here.
The way that she's like, there's no windows. How is this possible? And there's like the little force field and stuff. And he's just like, I've got so much more to tell you. Again, disregarding the Prime Directive in this. However, back in main engineering, we get one of the most technologically amazing scenes in the entire movie. We get the reveal of the Borg Queen. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Data, being Data, is very inquisitive, and he's just wanting to know everything. Who are you? I am one. I am many. Oh, well, the Borg are a hive. There is no singular one. And when we see Alice Krieg as the Borg Queen descend down, that shot blew me away in 1996, because you see that the way it was done, where she was essentially laid, draped in a blue screen with like the neck part hanging off from the front of her torso and the Borg skull. Again, Factory Entertainment are making a replica Borg skull, and you see it draping down, and you see it go down and then fit into the actual body. And then it's just so seamless how they move from obviously her descending down, connecting to the body, and then walking away. To this day, it still blows me away. And this is 28 years ago. This is like the mid-90s tech. That right there, how they did that in 1996. I will always be amazed.
I assume that what they did is they filmed the whole scene of her standing there, like totally still, and then what they did is they cut out her like head and stuff from it, and then added to it, and then moved it around, and then moved into shot. It's very clever. I mean, it stays with you though, the idea of just like, just the Borg being like this, where they basically, because that's the thing, the Queens, effectively, they're cloned. Like, we don't find this out, but it's the only possible explanation, where basically, like, Picard basically goes, hey, I met a Queen when I was Locutus, kind of thing, and I was aware of them in the back of my mind. And he was like, how, but we killed you, but you look exactly the same. And it's the fact of somewhere on a Borg ship, hey, it's me.
I am the one. I am the many.
I bring order to chaos. That is not true at all. I bring chaos to order. There you go.
I bring chaos to order. Ooh, da da.
But it's the fact of like that they're obviously and it's kind of that scary thing of like with aliens, where it's a queen can be born out of any colony after a while. So it's this idea of going, hey, a Borg ship could potentially go, hey, we've got the DNA on file to make a queen, so we could just grow a queen and then create a collective anywhere. But like literally, the idea they could grow like a queen, and then they just kind of need to make the organic components, which effectively seem to be the top half, and then just put it into a mechanical body. And there's something scary about that effectively a collective can just come from nothing, like basically.
Sorry, David.
Her entrance was just as perfect as Khan's in the Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. I will say I have thoughts about the Borg Queen, okay, but we'll get to that later in a bit of a roundup, okay, because I have strong feelings about the Borg Queen, but it's a wonderful intro. Actually, one thing I want to mention, a random nerdy thing. Now, I got really confused by this because when I was a kid, there was a wonderful cartoon TV series I watched called Phantom 2040, which was basically the Phantom, like the purple Phantom from the comics and stuff. But they brought out a TV show of what he'd be like in a dystopian future. And it's brilliant. It's very political. It is very highbrow kind of thing for a kid's show. And there's a character in it called, what is it, Commander Graft, who basically is like a victim who basically has no limbs. All he is a torso and a head, but they basically brought him back with cybernetics. And the crazy thing is that basically he basically is a villain because he attacks the main protagonist in robots, where basically they just get this head and torso and then just put it into different machines and stuff, and then he can control it. So he controls all these mechs or all these gunships and stuff, or he has different bodies that he can travel around in and stuff. And it's horrible body horror for like a kid's cartoon. It always stuck with me. And I always thought it was influenced by this, by the Borg Queen. But hilariously, Phantom 2040 came out 2 years before this. The idea of there being a head and torso being put into a mechanical body. And I'm just like, is that just a weird coincidence? Or is there some deeper trope in sci-fi of, well,
I
you could
mean,
do this if you had cybernetics, you know?
it could be very Blade Runner cyberpunk,
Yeah, it's
as
got that
well.
whole neuromancer kind of like
Yeah,
Shadowrun kind of dystopian horror to it, I think.
yeah. We see though in this scene indications that the Queen is enamored, shall we say, with Data and his quest to become more human. And I love the fact she goes like because his emotion chip has been turned off as we saw earlier on, and she
Yeah.
goes, "That's because you have not been properly stimulated."
Because he's defying her.
Yeah,
He's able to just be like, oh yeah, there's nothing you can do. You can't get the encryption stuff from me, so you can't unlock the main chip computer. There's nothing you can do to persuade me because I can't be harmed, kind of thing. And then she's just like, okay. And then
Like,
turns
yeah, and
on
then
the
click, yep.
turns on the emotion chip and then reveals she's given him a gift. And they open up one of the flaps, and you see that they have grafted organic components onto his arm. And again, with the body horror, we see like obviously Data is an android, so we see like his arm is exposed, but they have grafted human skin from someone. Let's not forget
scary.
one of the crew
Scary.
Yeah.
onto his arm. And again, a testament to 1996 special effects where she blows on that bit of skin and the goosebumps
Yeah.
rise up and the music swells a little bit when the goosebumps go up as well. And Data's reaction to that, and she's like, "Was that enjoyable?"
No, was it
Oh,
good for you?
Oh yeah, was that good for you? And he's just like, "Ooh." I love it though because it's
Yeah.
just yeah, and for 1996 guys to see this in 1996 in a Star Trek, it's like just completely
Wait, it's how
unheard of.
clever it is. It's the idea because, like, nowadays you would get CG where they basically replaced a whole bloody section of it to be like computer graphics, and it would look shit. Whereas what you have here is they've obviously done it where his arm isn't really actually chained up, and
Yeah,
therefore it's an entirely a prosthetic. That's why we're able to see into the circuitry. That's why we're allowed to see like the skin being sort of hung across it. And yeah, and then the only bit of CG is like put on the top of it, which is the goosebumps and the hair and stuff, but it fits so well against actual prosthetics rather than just being everything CG. It's yeah.
Picard and Lily going through the ship. Picard offering exposition in regards to where they are, what the ship is, where they are from. I love the fact that this is like for a non-Trekkie, and I want to know if Sammy understood this as well. Where was this scene? Did this scene explain Star Trek to its fullest? Where it's just like, this is the Enterprise. You know, there are thousands of member planets, and there is no money in the 24th century. And she's like, but you don't get paid. And it's the way that he just explains it off the cuff, where it's just like, money is no longer the accumulation of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. We seek to better ourselves. And it's just like it's an ideology. It's a perfect world to be in, and the way that it's just so off the cuff explained to him, and how blown away Lily is by this. And then we get to the bit where she's like, "Oh, talk to me about these enemies. What are they called? The what?" And she's like, "Oh, the Borg. Oh, the Borg sounds Swedish." And I love that it's a Beyond Borg reference. And but it's just the way he does it all the way through. You can tell he's tense. You can tell that he's determined, and he can hear the Borg in his head, and he's determined to rid them from the ship as well as Earth. And he's explaining all this through. And when they get to the holodeck, as the Borg are chasing, because he provokes the Borg to get them into the holodeck, so he fires at one of the Borgs. She's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" She is terrified because they've been walking through all these drones, not doing anything. And then as the Borg are trying to break in, he's like trying to select a dress for Lily, and he's like, "Look, he's like something in satin." And then they go in, and then the scene changes straight away because they're in the holodeck, and they're in this like 1940s.
The Big
not even a
Goodbye.
bar.
No.
Yeah.
What's it
Well,
called?
throwback to TNG. The big goodbye
Goodbye.
was
Yeah,
the throwback to TNG.
But
the
it's
Dixon
not,
Hill
it's
series.
not a bar though, is it? It's like a club in the 1940s.
Yeah. It's a
Ironically,
speakeasy.
this is a club, but it was shot in a train station in Los Angeles that Patrick Stewart was over the moon about filming in, because Patrick Stewart is a huge train fan and train spotter. So it was his dream to shoot something in this train station in LA. And when I remember where it is, I'm going to go visit it. But I love the fact that
it's a testament to how good the film is and how fluid the writing is that this scene fits. Like, because it's so odd. It's like, I wonder what Sammy thought. Like, with this, where you just go, okay, so they're on a ship, they're running away from horror monsters, and now they're in a 1940s bar, and it's like, yep, this is Star Trek. Like, this is.
But then we see, like, oh, I'm looking for Nicky the Nose. Oh, he hasn't been in months. And then Picard's like, oh, wrong chapter. And then it transitions to a dance scene in this club.
And Lily's just looking around being like,
what the fuck is going on? Yeah, she doesn't know what a holodeck is or anything like that. And then they're in this, and then we see Nicky the Nose, who is Bob Pinciati from that 70s show.
It's like Dick
Hey
Tracy.
there, ho there, hey there. And it's, Nicky the Nose with a metal nose. He's like, well, look what the cat done. What's shaking dicks?
We're shaking dicks.
All the usual martinis and scuts. I'm just like, yeah, martinis and scuts. Ethan Phillips, though, is the
maitre d'.
The maitre d'. Thank you, Graham. The maitre d', where he gets the ball going to the. Sorry. What was it? It's fully booked, and there was a strict dress code.
Yeah, and they're like two Borg drones just walking in to this bar.
They're just
and then obviously they try to attack him, but then like realize it doesn't do anything. And then when they examine him, they realize he's a hologram because his face distorts and whatnot. But it's a great little cameo from Ethan Phillips. And how does this sound? I'm talking about a scene that has Ethan Phillips in it that I'm not complaining about, which is unlike all of our reviews of Voyager episodes.
Neelix cheese. But yeah, Picard is shaking down Nicky the Nose's goons. We don't know why. Suddenly he pulls up a violin case, and then we go, 1940s violin case? Must be a Tommy gun. It's a Tommy gun. And then Picard, without any discrimination, just starts opening fire against the Borg, who are throwing waiters left, right, and centre at the moment. And yeah, this is where we see Picard at his most angry and at his most vulnerable. We see the rage that he has built up over the last 7 years consume him to a point where he is killing these Borg indiscriminately with all the bullets in the magazine, and when the magazine is depleted, he runs after them to kill to hurt them with
to strike them with the butt of it.
And only Lily goes, hey, I think you got him. And the fact that he puts the gun down and immediately starts going into their insides, and Lily finds that it's one of the Starfleet uniforms. She goes, oh, Jean-Luc, it was one of your guys. He's like, yeah, this was Ensign Lynch. And he's not even thinking about it. He is so hyper-focused on what he's supposed to do. And we find out that the Borg cannot, for some reason, adapt to projectile weapons. And he disabled the safety protocol, so even a holographic bullet can kill. Which led me to sort of go, why didn't Starfleet just issue guns?
Yeah.
Right? I think this is the thing. I think it's the idea of I think it's probably because it's very difficult to have like a submachine gun on a starship where you could fire through a wall and depressurize
Yeah.
everything in a kind of way where they're like going, we don't really want that to happen for the unlikelihood of the Borg. But I think it'd probably be like if you were going to attack a Borg ship, yes, we would make some machine guns. We would make sort of like projectile weapons
What
rather
I
than phasers.
what I loved about this is Star Trek Online, when they did a First Contact Day a few years ago, they introduced the Tommy gun as a usable weapon, and it is the only weapon in Star Trek Online that cannot be adapted by the Borg. So whenever you go down to the Borg invasion zone, which is a map on the game, everyone just uses Tommy guns. And it's the most surreal thing to see like 10, 20 Starfleet officers running around a map with Tommy guns in the 25th century. But yeah, so he's looking for a bit of technology on the Borg drone. He gets it. He calibrates it with the tricorder.
He just puts his hands straight in there. He just gets his
straight in
hands
there.
straight into the Borg. He knows what he's looking for. And like you say, he does it with this sort of like discompassionate kind of, yep, this used to be one of my people, but there's nothing we can do about it now kind of thing. We've just got to keep moving on. But hi, Sean O'Sullivan. He's asking, what makes this podcast so special? Lots of podcasts have a north. Well, that's true, but we only have a north. The only way is up. That's what I'd say.
We are the north. Mark's got to run. Have a fantastic day, Mr. Cartier.
Have fun, Mr. Cartier.
You had me at Tommy guns are not adaptable by the Borg. They're not in Star Trek Online, and it's amazing.
I love the idea of it. It's that weird thing where you just kind of go, wow, there's probably loads of stuff where you just go, hey, if we use lesser technology, like that's it. You kind of just wonder, like, what would happen if you used a nuke in the Star Trek universe in certain capacities? Because other races would probably just have nothing to do with it. They'd be like, actually, no, what a silly idea. But you'd be like, there's probably no preparation for it. There's probably no defense for it because no one's used one for like so long.
One episode of the original series, a conventional nuclear warhead is detonated close to the Enterprise. And it causes a little bit of damage, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Romulan episode, right?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. See, fullbacks for David. He's going to
was that the Enterprise incident?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was the Enterprise incident.
That's why we have you here. You're beautiful and knowledgeable.
Back on the planet's surface, though, we see that repairs are well underway in preparation for the launch of the Phoenix.
And another good cameo.
And another good cameo from Reginald Barclay.
Mr. Broccoli.
Mr. Broccoli, Howling Mad Murdoch himself, comes back into the Next Generation in this film. And I love this because it is hero worship all the way through, where he's just like, you know, he's going on about this like drive coil. It's obviously like a moonshine coil that they've just nicked off some set in Montana. And they're just like, oh, I was just thinking of using this for the plasma coil. And we get to see Geordie's eyes up close for the first time, where you can actually adjust it. And Cochrane's just staring, just like, what the fuck? And the way that Barclay acts, it's like never meet your heroes, but it's absolute hero worship. It's probably what I would have been like an STLV if we were allowed to touch people.
That's how I felt with Babs, Jess Bush, and Clint Howard in Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like with Doug Jones. Like Doug Jones nearly made me cry because I was just like, you are the sweetest human being.
Well, it's because he bridged the gap. He was very much kind of like going, no, I have to be physical because that's his way. Because he's such a caring person.
He is an absolute darling.
But I think it's wonderful. Like I was saying, it's how perfect the cameos are in this. Like they all feel natural. Like it doesn't feel like they're going, hey, fans, look at this, you fuckers. You know, it very much feels like, hey, yeah, it makes sense that Barclay would be there. And it's good that he's doing stuff that's Barclay. It makes sense that they'd have an EMH in this new ship and it would be the same one that we have on Voyager. Like, and there's just something wonderful and natural about every single little cameo in this. And it's great seeing Barclay get space in the film, you know, like, because you worry that like the film, you know, because films always, me growing up with film adaptations of stuff, they always went, hey, let's get rid of all the minor characters, only keep the main people, and then recast everyone else. And it was always the way. And then this just goes, no, we'll get the the B actors from like the show and use them in the film, like Ogawa, like Barclay. It's great.
Two things, David. Sammy wants you to show your mug.
Oh.
She wants to see the mug. And Sean O'Sullivan, pop quiz hotshot. For what reason does Picard envy Data? Because Data can turn off his emotions.
Yeah.
It's Montgomery Scott, sir.
Hey,
Giving it all she's got, Captain.
The only thing that would make that better is if it's green.
There you go. That's all I've got.
Actually, I've actually got one today. You can't really read it, but I bought this in STLV. We have Red Shirt Ale from the Federation of Beer.com, where it's basically, a wonderful red shirt there. Yeah, there we go.
of course, the towel.
Oh, God, we're surrounded by merch.
for when it gets cold. But
Can we get merch for another movie, please?
Yeah, Paramount, hurry up.
Yeah, please, Paramount.
So we see that, Barclay shakes his hand and Cochrane is genuinely uncomfortable by the whole interaction. And he confronts Jodie, doesn't confront, he just goes, do they all have to do that? And it's just like, oh, well, everyone does it. We all grew up about hearing what happened here. And
I learned this in school,
I went to Zephyr Cochrane High School. And then he goes
learned
on
about warp travel, and the first chapter is Zephyr Cochrane. And you're like,
and he's
like,
about
the statue?
Yeah, that's later on when he's trying to do a runner, and he's just like, "There's a statue here, and you're looking up to the stars." And he's just like, "I'm gonna take a leak," and Johnny's like, "I don't detect any leak."
Leak? I don't detect any leak.
Don't you people in the 24th century ever pee?
Oh, leak! That's really funny.
But that's a great callback though, because one of the main running things in mid-90s was like, the one thing that people always said was there was no bathrooms in Star Trek. No one ever went to the toilet. There was no clear indication where a bathroom was. And when The Next Generation was finishing, there was a 1-hour documentary with Jonathan Frakes about all good things and how how the Next Generation is ending. There's a movie and there's going to be a new show called Star Trek Voyager and DS9. And he was like, many of you have always been wondering, is there a toilet on the Enterprise? Yes, one, and it's here. And they deliberately put one singular toilet on the Master Systems display in engineering, as well as a few ducts. But it's like literally just there. And I love that. And I love that in this movie, it's like, do the people in the 24th century ever pee? And it's tiny little things like that. They're an absolute fantastic.
I think it's one of those things where it's like there's stuff like the sonic shower where we don't see a sonic shower for years, but and then we do, and we're like, oh, okay, that's how it works, is it? Okay, and but we know they're there. We just go, hey, we don't need to see it,
Yeah. Back on the Enterprise, Picard makes it to the bridge. Rumors of my Rumors of my assimilation have been greatly exaggerated. He confirms after killing Ensign Lynch and stealing half of his body that the Borg are trying to create an interplexing beacon on the deflector dish to contact the Borg that are in the Delta Quadrant, which again is alluded to in Star Trek Enterprise, but I'll get to that in a bit. So
one thing I just want to point out, he finds that out because of the component that he stole out of the dead Borg's body, which I'm gonna call Voyager bullshit here, because like I was saying in the episodes of Voyager we've done, where you're like, how does the technology just work together? Like the Borg can't be using USB-C, but he literally just gets this component out of a dead Borg and then just plugs it into the tricorder and goes, oh, it works together. And you'd sit there but like, I know this is a film and I've got to make a leap of faith. However, it's like there's no sort of opening up and rewiring, but yeah, there we go. That's my bitch moment.
Their plan is to contact the Borg in the Delta Quadrant using the deflector dish to boost the signal. And the only way that they're going to stop that is by taking them out. So Picard goes, how are you with your zero-G training? I remember I was sick to my stomach. Why do you ask? Next thing, they're suiting up to go outside. And I love this. Again, this is another really, really, really cool scene where we get to see the ship close up, upside down, and you get to see them just like walking on the underside of the saucer section towards the deflector dish. And I think it's absolutely brilliantly shot, brilliantly like lit and everything like that. And you see like Picard going to Worf, how are you doing? He's like, not well, sir. He's like, just try not to look at the stars. So he immediately looks up at the stars. Like, try to just look down at try to look at the bulkhead. And the way it just like pans back, and it doesn't do it in a way like they're upside down. It's like they're the right way up. The ship is actually upside down and flying. And I love the way that this scene is done. And it just shows you like just how big this ship is compared to the crew. But it doesn't quite get to that little scene that we all know and love yet. Because the next scene, famously, is Data and the Queen.
Oh my word.
Where we famously get, I am fully functional and programmed in multiple techniques.
And then she goes, how long has it been since you've used this programming?
Well, he tries
though?
to
And
break free. He tries to break free because they're still grafting onto his arm. Again, really disgusting body horror as they do that, trying to graft it on. You can like the ASMR as well of them, like the flesh touching the metal and everything like that. And he tries to break free. And as he's doing a runner, she puts up a force field, and then one of the drones cuts his arm with his new skin on it.
Yeah.
And he feels
we see the
pain.
skin properly slice. We get to see the sort of the big wound on it, and then Data feels physical pain for the first time.
Yeah.
And is genuinely horrified by it. Like, it's genuinely sends him into overdrive, and there's some, and she's just like, yep. That's a sensation we can give you.
She's like, well, if it bothers you, just rip it off like you would a defective part.
Yeah.
And he can't. He physically can't, because he knows that the pain would be overwhelming and he can't do it. And then rather like weirdly goes into like, are you aware of physical forms of intimacy?
Yeah.
And I love the fact he's such.
It's kind of pointing out like, hey, you can feel pain now. Imagine what else we can make you feel. Because even that sensation of pain would have felt amazing to him because he's never had it before.
And he's like, if you are referring to sexuality, fully functional, programmed in multiple techniques. And it's the way she goes, how long has it been? 8 years, 4 months, 20 days.
Yeah. And we know that that's referring to Tasha. We know that's referring to...
It's the fact as well. It is like
breaks down the
bang on accurate as well. Like compared to when the film was released to when that episode airs, it's just like...
Really?
Yeah, mate.
I didn't know it was accurate. I didn't...
We know about the star dates. We know since the beginning of Star Trek The Next Generation, the star dates have been accurate. And there still are up until here, and there still are in Lower Decks, right? 8 years, 4 months, 20 days, blah, 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 blah. It was between the release date of First Contact and when that episode aired in the United States.
Give or take, I think.
Give or take. He went to the
That
second.
is really brilliant. I just want to say, Sean in the chat is pointing out some fun stuff, but it's like, yeah, that's it. I can't answer all the questions, but like Ensign Lynch still had his uniform under the Borg stuff. How did that work? It makes sense to me, to be fair, because the Borg aren't going to bother assimilating you and then taking your clothing off. They're just going to be like, hey, we need to give him an exoskeleton. So basically, we'll just start grafting the exoskeleton on top of whatever's there. And yeah, and then they just kind of build all of that metal on top of the uniform.
Yeah, but
Picard didn't know when he was assimilated, because you see him in his almost butt naked in The Best of Both Worlds.
I think with him, they probably went like, oh, let's shower this one. He's older.
But as we see in this film, and as we've alluded to, where the crew being assimilated, they do not care about the uniform. They rip someone's arm off. They
Locutus was special.
Yeah.
Like, they made a ceremony of assimilating him rather than just going, hey, this is a guy we just grabbed and injected and we need him as a drone now. Like, he, because Locutus was never meant to be a drone. Like, the whole thing is Locutus was meant to be something bigger.
With the body horror, though, we see that the severed arm is not neat. They've literally just torn the skin apart, shoved the cybernetic parts in there. The eye, there's just remnants of blood and matter around where they replaced the eyes and stuff like that. These are these are not drones that they will take their time. These are drones, like Graham said, it could have been 1 or 2 or 3 drones, and they've had to multiply fast. They've had to adapt and assimilate fast. So they're not going to take their time removing uniforms or anything like that. They just want as many drones as possible in the shortest amount of time. So they will just rip skin off. They will rip eyes out if they have to get those components in place. And it shows how horrifying the Borg really is. And I don't think...
Yeah, it's by allowing them to keep these remnants of individuality, like their uniforms and their comm badges and stuff, it's pointing out how little the Borg care about individuality. It's like, hey, cool, you're wearing that, we're not going to bother getting rid of it. We're just, because it means nothing to us. Like the idea of this uniform, this clothing, we're not even going to take it off. That's equally scary.
Why bring up eyes again? Because it's horrifying, Sammy. But the deflector dish scene where what they have to do is release part of the deflector dish via the maglocks. And really annoyingly, if I had more time this week, I actually have the LCARS animation from the screens where they're doing the maglock. So I was going to do part of the intro where we were going to release the podcast, and then just
also, can I just point out the shittiness of a touchscreen display when you're blatantly in a spacesuit.
Glove mode.
Whoever invented that needs to be shot. Just going, hey, tiny buttons, massive finger.
But when you see the Borg creating an interplexing beacon on the dish, and everyone's walking around, and they're just calmly, they're not firing at the Borg. They're just we're going to do this, and we're going to disable it, and then separate it, and then that's it. They won't be able to do it. And when the Borg cotton on to what they're doing, and Picard fires at one, and it just flies off into space after bouncing off the deflector dish and stuff it's so cool. It is so... Zero-G Borg fights are amazing.
Has Zero-G fights been done before this? I can't remember anything because this is so good. There's only a couple of instances where I can say that a Zero-G fight worked. Obviously we have stuff like the game Dead Space or whatever that manages to do it really well, where it basically goes, hey, look, it's silent, you wouldn't be able to hear anything coming up on you, kind of thing. And that's effectively how this works. And it's an added level of horror. And this is probably one of the most dramatic scenes and the most sort of gets your blood pumping scenes. And it's right in the middle of the movie. And I think there's something very clever about putting the scene here, because if you were starting to drift off, you're very much back in it now.
This scene is also interplayed with Cochrane doing a runner from the missile complex. And they are trying to find him. And LaForge finds him using a heat signature from his eyes, which is very Predator, which I really enjoyed. And again...
Could Geordie be a Predator?
There was a deleted scene. There was a deleted scene here because there was going to be a bit where he jumps off a cliff.
Wow.
And they capture him. But instead, he does a run and then they just phaser him into a little stream. Yeah. And Cochrane's no, I'm not going back. I don't want to be a statue. And Riker's just we don't have time for this. And he's just yeah, you know what? Bang. And I love the fact he's passed out in this stream, hungover, possibly drowning. And Riker just goes, you told him about the statue?
Yeah.
And I love that. But then back to the deflector dish. This is a fantastic scene because when the Borg cotton on to what the crew are actually doing and they start going after them, and you see, is it Worf fires and they adapt? So then Worf just has a blade in the back of his spacesuit, and he chops off the arm. He stabs him in the shoulder with the blade. And then as he stabs him, the drone slices his spacesuit on his leg.
Yeah.
And then Worf is losing oxygen. And I think Worf had chopped an arm off. Yeah. He chopped an arm off.
Yeah. He chops an arm off and it's hanging from a cable. So it's still kind of tied to the Borg, but he's severed it.
When did we see a severed arm in Star Trek?
Yeah.
An arm being chopped off. So then Picard's in a rush like that. And then we see Hawk. Expendable
Mr. Bread.
Mr. Bread.
Mr. Bread.
Mr. Bread is carried off by one of the drones over the horizon of the deflector dish, never to be seen again. And then
By a
Picard,
Klingon too, wasn't he?
yeah, was he a
Was
Klingon?
not a Klingon that looked like a Klingon Borg?
Did it?
Oh,
Because
wow.
he had the ridges.
I didn't notice that.
Oh, I'll have to check that. It could have been a Bolian.
Oh,
Perhaps.
maybe.
He-
We saw some
maybe.
Bolians, but
Yeah.
But yeah, so when one's coming after Picard and he fires at the did he fire at the deflector dish or something like that? Or he
Yeah,
did-
no,
he releases the maglock, does that one, realizes that Hawks needs to be done as well, and then flies over
yeah.
the Borg. And again, you can tell.
Well,
this
he
is
has a
string.
Borg coming for him, so what he does is he backs up and then realizes that he can actually take the magnetic stuff off his feet and then sort of jump across and fly to the other end, avoid the Borg that's getting to him, and then turn his boots back on so he can magnetize to the other side. It's a great little trick. It's a great little action thing.
Yeah. As he releases a maglock, you see the Borg drone is about to go after him, but he is blown away because we see Worf has used the severed arm of the Borg drone to secure his spacesuit. And then Worf sees that all the maglocks are being released. Part of the deflector dish is
Well,
coming
no,
up.
the thing is, that's not what happens because basically he's about to turn the maglock off, and then he gets attacked by a drone, and then we
Oh,
see
sorry.
that actual drone is Hawk, where it's basically, and then we have the wonderful
Yes!
shot where
Yes!
Hawk turns his head to him, and then you see that he's part assimilated, and you go like, oh fuck, and then they have this big fight, Picard and Hawk, and then Picard's like trying to get away from him, and that's when Worf just saves Picard by shooting Hawk and firing him into space, effectively. So it's
As the
goodbye
interplexing
character
beacon,
who red shirt who lasted a lot longer than I expected.
as the interplexing beacon is charging up to send a signal to the Delta Quadrant, and you see it's like locked on by an attachment thing, and Worf shoots at that. No, Picard shoots at that to
The power
separate it.
cable.
The power cable. And then we get one of the most famous lines in Star Trek. Worf
Oh,
looking at the
God.
dish full of drones, just going, assimilate this. Bang.
It's so cringe, but I'm totally willing to forgive it because it's Worf and it's great.
It's so funny because when the Deep Space Nine technical manual came out, they did they did mission patches, very much like NASA does for like different ships and satellites and stuff like that. They did mission patches for like the Danube runabout. So they had like a Danube, so they had a cartoon Danube carrying a sack of stuff, saying "I've got this," and then like Deep Space Nine was a bumblebee, like fixing stuff because the work bees, and then they had quite famously the Defiant patch where it's the Defiant as a shark, and they use Worf's lines like Defiant Development Project, assimilate this. And it's brilliant, like this tiny little line comes out. But yeah, they stopped the interplexing beacon, but really, really curiously, the episode in Enterprise in season 2 where we do encounter the Borg again, where it is the remnants of the Borg from the Borg sphere in First Contact that crash landed in the North Pole.
Right, yeah.
They send a signal to the Delta Quadrant, and it would take 200 years for that signal to reach the Delta Quadrant for the Borg to be aware of it. 200 years is the next generation.
Ah.
So,
So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, really.
it's a
So the
self-fulfilling
Borg
prophecy, yeah.
the Borg find out, oh yeah, we need to go on this time travel mission because we know that we go on this time travel mission because we got a message from this time travel mission. And you're
So
like,
yeah, so they travel back in time. They travel back in time to assimilate Earth. They wanted to assimilate the Enterprise, assimilate Earth, send a signal to the Borg in the Delta Quadrant, which is 200. You know, it would take 200 years to get there. They couldn't do it then. So then, when they were unfrozen in the 22nd century, and then the whole Enterprise episode happened, they sent a signal then, which was another interplexing beacon, and it would then take 200 years for that message to reach the Delta Quadrant and for the Borg to come back. So again, it's just like timey-wimey stuff.
One thing that I absolutely love about this, though, before Worf blows it up, as soon as the power cable is severed, and the beacon stops working, we cut to we cut to the Borg Queen with data, and she immediately recognizes it. She immediately registers it and goes, Data, the plan has changed. And it's that idea if she's immediately gone, oh, that didn't work. Okay, well, let's think up something new. And I love that. I love the fact of how quickly she adapts to, okay, new plan, it shows how the Borg are all connected.
In the missile complex, we see Zevran Cochrane doing his final checks in the cockpit. He is met by Riker. Cochrane is hung the fuck over, shall we say, as the doors open. And I love the fact that Riker is still... He's still hero worship in a way where he's just like, would you look at that? He's like, oh, don't you have a moon in the 24th century? Sure, but it looks different. You can see New Tycho City, even Lake Armstrong on a day like this. There are 60 million people living on the moon. And do you know, Doctor, he's like, don't tell me it's all thanks to me. I'm sick to death. And then this is where we get the admittance of why Cochrane is doing all this. And he's like, I didn't do this project to usher in a new era of peace. You know why I did this? Money, women. I want to be on an island surrounded by women. Do you think I like to go to space? I don't even like to fly. I take trains. And it's just like, it's that realization that, the person that history has built up over the last 300 years as like this savior of humanity and someone who was committed to ushering in a new era of peace and this, that, and the other. He was just an alcoholic that wanted a big payoff from some scientific experiment. And it's great because it humanizes these heroes. And the thing is with the Next Generation crew, with Riker and LaForge and stuff like that, they don't really take it, like, they're not really crushed by it. What I've found.
I think they have an understanding of humanity, and it's the fact of, I think they're just happy to have met this person, because I think at the end of the day, regardless of someone's intentions, their actions still speak for themselves. It's the idea of going, hey, he still did the thing, whether he meant to or not. It doesn't matter that he wasn't like particularly a good person. He still did this good. It's the difference between intention and action.
The needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. And I love the fact that Riker ends it, goes, someone once said, don't try to be a great man. Don't try to be a great man, just be a man and let history make its judgments. And he's like, that's rhetorical nonsense. Who said that? He went, you did 10 years from now. And I love that because it's sort of saying you can't escape your fate. You really can't escape your fate. But again, we see an Enterprise with Cochrane. We don't see much of Cochrane in Star Trek Enterprise, but what we do see, or what is alluded to, heavily links back to First Contact, where like Cochrane was a known drunk. And he, at commencement speeches, he would go on about cybernetic beings and humans from the future coming to save it and stuff like that, and everyone just disregarded it. And you just like, I love that little callback for that. But on the Enterprise, things are taking a turn for the worse. The ship is becoming more and more assimilated. They are losing more and more crew.
Well,
however,
basically, before the Borg they were remarking about how the Borg weren't just taking over the whole ship. They were staying to certain segments of the ship because that's all they needed. And then as soon as they've destroyed the beacon, the Queen's basically gone, okay, I'll take the whole ship then, And so it means that they're now fighting a losing battle with like the drones taking over. And they realize they've got to do something about it.
But we see Picard order the security team to continue fighting and fight hand to hand if possible. And Worf sort of chips in as the security officer in this situation, where he goes, Captain, we have lost this ship. We must trigger the auto-destruct. We cannot fight. It is a losing battle. And we see the Moby Dick in Picard in this movie take effect, where he's like, we have not lost the Enterprise, Mr. Worf. We are not going to lose the Enterprise. And we see the first direct confrontation between two Next Generation characters, like really, really serious confrontation between two Next Gen, where Picard calls Worf a coward. It's like, you just want to run away. You don't want to stay and fight. You coward. And even Worf is like, if you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand.
Yeah.
And it's really, really powerful because you see how consumed Jean-Luc is becoming about this whole situation and his drive to destroy the Borg and save the ship.
And he's turning against people that he's fought side by side with and almost
Yeah.
died with too, right?
We have like Worf saying they need to destroy the ship. We've got Crusher basically going, look, that's the only thing we can do. It's a losing battle. We have to mitigate the Borg.
Crusher is sort of just carrying out the orders. She's like, it's the captain's orders, and let's try and find and stuff like that. And Lily's just like,
she does argue first, but then what happens is he just goes, no, that's my final word. It's this, and then both Worf and Crusher just go, yeah, if we're not going to change his mind, then, and they are loyal to him. They always know that there's some kind of reason for him to act a certain way, and we kind of see that trust is bad when we blindly follow someone. When we just go, hey, actually,
Blindly
it might be
follow
Captain's orders, but that's why Picard left the neutral zone. Like that's why he left the border, because he was like, no, those might be my orders, but I'm pretty sure we know better.
I love the fact though that Lily's the wild card in this situation. She's just like, oh well, if we can take out the Borg or blow up by blowing up the ship, then let's just blow it up. And Crusher's just like, the captain made it clear about his orders. She's like, no, and then goes after Picard in the observation and just really reads in the riot act in this scene. And again, this is a iconic, legendary scene in Star Trek and this movie, where she immediately just calls, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
You son of a bitch.
It's because we get to see a weakness to Picard. We get to see an anger and a weakness to Picard. And because we never see this, the closest we get is the beginning of DS9, where we get to see another character's perception of Picard and be like, hey, Picard might be a dickhead, like, from Sisko's perspective. But in this scene, we get to actually just go, hey, no, actually, Picard isn't correct. He's someone that we've trusted, we've followed, but he's still not infallible. And that's what's wonderful about it, where he's just so consumed by his own rage and his quest for revenge that he has become Ahab, and she calls him out on it. By connecting to him, the only, like, accidentally quoting, mentioning Moby Dick, which is something that would resonate very much with Picard. And she doesn't know that, but it works perfectly.
But she goes on about like how he killed Ensign Lynch, and she's just like, you didn't even try to save him. Where was your evolved sensibility then? And she's just constantly provoking him. He's just like, I don't have time for this. I don't have. And it's the way that she goes, Jean-Luc, blow up the damn ship. And he just goes, no, and smashes we don't see Jean-Luc Picard. I mean, we saw it with the Tommy gun earlier on, but we do not see Jean-Luc have an outburst of anger. And to see him smash the little model ships. And
even in Tapestry, we saw a weakened Jean-Luc Picard, but we didn't see him go to this length, right?
Yeah. I mean, what did you think of the whole the whole scene, David? Like seeing Jean-Luc for the first time like this?
Well, even the outtakes, they all said like they didn't mean for all this. It was meant to be a joke with a lot of the dialogue, right? And it became so iconic with the movie now. It was perfect. Yeah, the captain's not always right, and it stood the test of time, right?
Yeah, but you see like his frustration with the way that Starfleet has dealt with the Borg, and the frustration that he has that they cannot fight the Borg, they cannot defeat the Borg. And you see, like, every year they invade our territory and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds and we fall back. And not this time, the line must be drawn here, this far, no further. And then the vengeance comes in and he goes,
it's such a good line.
And that was meant to be a joke, right?
Yeah.
And that line was meant to be the biggest joke.
Yeah. And he goes, I will make them pay for what they've done. And you just see, like, this is the closest Picard gets to
the fire
Cisco.
goes out of Lily, where it's the fact that she's been so firebrand throughout this whole thing, and then she gets to see the true rage in him, and she's just silent. She's just looking at him, just being like, sort of, okay, right. And there's something powerful in that, the fact of like how it's like a battle of wills between them, and then she just goes, I need to step away from this.
It's the way he's like, where she goes, Captain Ahab has to go hunt his whale.
Yeah.
And when she, she's looking at the results of his outrage, the destroyed ships, and you broke your little ships. I'll see you around, Ahab. And then he piled upon the whale's white hump a sum of all the rage and hate felt before him. If his chest was a cannon, he would have fired his heart upon it. And I love that.
Writing. Beautiful writing.
It's Moby Dick. It's Moby Dick, and
the hilarious thing is that she's like, "Oh, what's that from?" And he's like, "It's from Moby Dick." And she's like, "Oh, I never actually read it. I just knew the general premise of it." And there's something wonderful about that, where she's, without knowing, tricked him or connected with him on the level that he'll understand, that's made him realize that he has become this character. And it's kind of got like like connections to in DS9, where Cisco and the guy who's the head of the Marquis, where they connect by connecting it to Les Miserables, where it's that idea where they're both sort of, and it's this Eddington, yeah, and they connect through literature, where they kind of go, look, these are the parallels in literature between these characters and these situations, and it wins him round, where basically he realizes that he is blinded by his rage. He's not thinking logically. He's not thinking for the best thing. He's just purely thinking about his vengeance. And he goes, right, cool. I'll blow up the ship,
Yeah.
And this is one thing I disagreed with when I was watching it with Charles. It was the fact of, I was like, I don't think they should blow up the ship. Like, I wasn't on the side of that, because we've seen what happens if one Borg survives. Losing the entire ship and then still not being able to clarify that there's not Borg on the planet, and you get rid of your only way to deal with them. I personally am like, I don't think that is the best solution. But, in this situation...
I suppose, though, with an antimatter explosion of that size, anything would be vaporized. So...
But we don't know that there's not Borg on the planet, and they'd be getting rid of all their resources to kind of deal with anything like that. So it's and there are Borg on the planet technically, but we don't know that for another 100 years. So.
The Borg Queen survived the Wolf of 359, right?
Or did
she? She was on the Borg cube, right?
Or did she? You think it's some 4-dimensional terms. But yeah, so he agrees to evacuate the Enterprise and initiate the auto-destruct. We see that the Phoenix is preparing to take flight. And we, a nice little interplay between the Phoenix and the Enterprise. The Enterprise is preparing to commit self-destruction. They are trying to find a lowly little island where they can stay out of the way of history. And I love that Picard apologizes. Red car. Yeah, well, I mean, I love that Picard apologizes to Worf. As well, it shows maturity. It shows a respect, and Worf is just like, but it's like, I regret some of the things I said to you. And he's like, some.
Michael Dorn, man, he can just steal any scene he's in. He's so good.
But yeah, they begin to evacuate the ship, or prepare for the evacuation. As the bridge clears, the camera pans in towards Picard, and all he hears is, Captain, Data.
Well, what we saw, though, is there's a little thing in this that Charles pointed out that I thought was brilliant, which is basically when they're on the bridge, we see that there's an escape hatch open. There's a Jeffries tube opening, lifted up, to demonstrate the fact of they're not able to use the turbo lifts. They're not able to use the standard things. They've had to be crawling around through all the pipes and stuff. And it's just a little bit of set dressing that they considered this. They considered, oh yeah, actually, how have they been doing everything? And it's a lovely little nod in that scene.
My most favorite scene in the movie is the Voyage of the Phoenix. The whole launch sequence is just quintessentially perfect for me. I famously wore my VHS copy of Star Trek First Contact, because I would watch the film every single day for about 2 years when I was younger, and I would watch this scene at least 5 times a day. The Voyage of the Phoenix, I love everything about it. I love the fact that you know, they're all like prepared for this launch and everything's taken off and there's a T minus, and then next thing like Cochrane's like, oh shoot, I forgot something, and they're like, oh, we can't take off without it, and it's just like a plastic CD, which is like the 2063 equivalent of a CD, and he puts
And it's
it
just
in,
a piece of acrylic. It's
It's
just
a
a
piece
little
of
piece of
acrylic.
acrylic.
and he's like, let's rock and roll, and then Steppenwolf Live starts playing out of it, and the missile launches out. Can you imagine though, if you didn't know what was going on, just seeing this nuclear missile just like flying out of the silo? You would absolutely crap yourself. But he launches the Phoenix, the music's blaring loud, beautiful special effects of this nuclear missile or converted missile leaving the silo, and you know, again, it shows how Cochrane is a brilliant scientist, but he's kind of working with what technology that he's got. So like they turn off the music and like Johnny's like, oh, we've got a red light on a second intake valve, and he just looks up and he just smacks the box. He's like, ah, don't worry about it, it's fine.
He's like, whatever.
But then
He's a genius. We trust him.
but that beautiful scene of the Phoenix breaking apart from the launch module and opening up, and I mean that has been used in the credits for Enterprise for 4 years. It is a beautiful scene, just seeing the Phoenix spread its wings in space. But then we get to see another change in Cochrane. We get to see Cochrane looking at Earth and going, oh wow. And you see, like, just in that little scene, Cochrane's views change a little bit as to why he's doing it. And like they always say, when you first go into space, like the people who have been out into space, just to see the Earth from space is a life-changing event, because you realize we are just one planet. And, you know, and from Earth, you know, from space, it looks absolutely perfect. And I love this scene. Yeah.
Being in Star Trek changed my life. Just that one moment when you fulfill your dreams, you're like, oh my god, it changes you.
I'm so jealous of you. I really am. I'll always be jealous of you. But the Picard talks to Lily before she gets into the escape pod. You know, if you do see Riker, just tell him to stay somewhere out of the way of history. And he says, I'm not going with them. You know, there's someone that he needs to help. And again, another fantastic scene of the escape pods launching from the Enterprise. I don't think we've ever seen escape pods in Star Trek up until this point as well. And I just thought it was a really neat shot of a close-up of the Enterprise and all the escape pods leaving towards...
Emissary we did, didn't we? When they were
one escape pod. Yeah, not seeing it like this onto this scale.
No.
Everything, like all the lifeboats leaving and stuff like that.
It's quite weird that they're like triangle shaped, aren't they? They're like sort of
they're like a triangular shape, because that was sort of the design. Everything was becoming more pointy, more angular.
Yeah. Although it is a bit weird though, where we just go, does Earth just have all of these escape pods just still there? Like all this crazy futuristic technology just buried on Earth in these escape pods, where like, you know, where they would have just had to, like, because when you think about it, like that means that like Cochrane must have been like, ooh, could really use that new technology, like we see in Voyager, where what happens when future technology goes somewhere and it advances humanity massively. I just love the idea that they're still there somewhere on the planet.
Do you think though, after all the events that happened, that all the escape pods just launched back on up to the Enterprise?
Can they do
how
that?
Did the Enterprise? Yeah, how does the Enterprise get them?
Yeah, like you couldn't teleport them, like, but maybe they have a backwards thing. Maybe they can fly around a bit more. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
the scene
weird plot hole. Sorry,
but the scene where Picard goes to engineering to confront the Queen.
Yeah.
Again, it's fantastic, and the way that they just blend it's like they seamlessly say that she was on the Borg cube when he was Locutus as well. And just I absolutely love this. I don't know if you guys want to go into this a little bit more, because I'm getting really dry throat.
Oh right, fair enough. No. Essentially, this is a wonderful scene, because the thing we realized, the Queen is such an iconic villain in stuff, and then we realized that nobody has any interaction with her. The only two people in the entire movie have interaction with the Queen, and it's so weird to have a villain like that. Like, you know, that. So actually, no. I suppose no. Every other villain has some kind of interaction with wider characters, and in this, she's very isolated because
Just
it's
Data
the
and
Borg
Picard.
as a whole that are the threat, not her specifically. You could probably just shoot her and be done with it. But but yeah. So basically, we get this wonderful discussion between them of Picard basically going, "Hey, look, I was Locutus once. I'm willing to sacrifice myself, give in, and become Locutus again if you will let Data go, because that is what's important to me." And she basically goes, "Oh wow, you'd give yourself willingly," kind of thing. "Oh, you remember me from like before," and it suggests that she's exactly the same. It suggests that the Borg Queen that was on the cube that assimilated Picard is exactly the same as this one, which is why I think of cloning, or they go, "Hey, cool, press the Queen machine button. Right, let's make a
The
new
Queen
queen."
Machine.
There's something somewhere where they're like, "Oh well, just replicate that pattern and make a new queen." Um, but then what it turns out is she basically goes, "Oh, that's great." However, and then she reveals Data, and Data's basically a lot more of him. So his arm, half of his face is now skin. So that he's slowly being turned human. He's like having his dream given to him by the Borg. And then she kind of just goes, "Hey, so I don't really want Locutus anymore because I've got something better. Now my companion is going to be Data." And then Data sort of, yeah, and then to prove his loyalty to her, Data basically decrypts the main computer, deactivates the self-destruct mechanism that she doesn't say that she knows about, but she obviously knows about. So the plan was futile anyway. And then, yeah, and then basically he just goes, "Okay, cool," and then Data says to Picard, her, he will make a wonderful drone.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of horrible, oh god, Data's turned. He's become a villain kind
But
of thing.
Picard's plan has
Yeah.
also backfired because Picard
Yeah.
wanted to sacrifice himself for Data, and it's just like, actually, that's not what's going to happen because
Yeah,
Data.
it's the
Yeah.
bleak bit. It's the bleakest bit of the film where you just go, "Oh, we have no way to stop them because they've just turned off the self-destruct mechanism. That was the only thing. None of the weapons are going to work against them," kind of thing. The Queen
Yeah.
has everyone exactly where she wants them.
Back on the Phoenix, they are charging the warp core to initiate the first warp speed jump. Everything is charging up, and suddenly everything goes dark. Cochrane looks over and goes, "Sweet Jesus!" Another famous gif and a famous line from the film where he sees the Enterprise covering the sun, and Riker's just like, "Oh, I'm sure they're just here to give us a send off," and it's like, "They're really not. They're really not." And
Because what's happening there is that basically the Queen is basically getting the Enterprise in position to blow up the Phoenix and then fulfill their plan and stop history that way.
Yep.
she fires Data. She orders Data to fire 3 quantum torpedoes at the Phoenix.
And he does.
complies. And again, a nice little bit of tension building here. You see Picard on the thing with the drones holding him there. Watch, and she goes, "Watch your futures end."
Yeah, it's a great line from the Queen.
And those torpedoes fire, and they just miss the Phoenix. And
immediately we see the Queen snap her head round, look at and yell Data. Like she's immediately gone, "Oh, deception."
Yeah. Resistance.
She's immediately realized it's a ruse. And then Data, what does he do?
Resistance is futile, and just twats the coolant tank on the warp core. And again, this is an amazing shot where you can see like the amount of pressure in that tank where he just gets thrown back by the amount, and she's just like, "Oh shit, what the fuck?" And like,
I think the scariest thing, I actually said this to Charles, I wasn't sure if that was CG or real smoke. I mean, but in a weird way, that I watched it again and I was like, "Oh, okay, you can see that it's CG." But I just love the fact of 1996 that is still convincing enough that I was
really
like,
good.
"That looks amazing." Like that looks better than anything from Rings of Power, which concerns me a little bit considering budgets involved. But it's
Industrial light and magic are there for a reason.
Yeah.
They are amazing.
It's so good. And then we get to see the entire sort of room fill up with effectively plasma, which will just melt away anything organic. So Picard immediately jumps up and starts climbing higher up because for some reason smoke doesn't travel upwards. Surely, well, heat does, but
It's not.
with the smoke,
It's not really. It's not really like.
yeah,
It's not really smoke. It's like
it's
a. It's like a
science
coolant
stuff.
plasma. Yeah. It's Voyager science.
Yeah,
I love the fact
it's
that
this
like
idea where we were going like, hang on, when you have smoke in a room or whatnot, don't you have to go down to get under it rather than But effectively, he climbs and avoids all of it, and then the Queen follows him. So the Queen is climbing up
with the
after him.
like the snaky tubes that come to take the Queen's torso back out of the cybernetic body, and
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
like climbing.
he
up
hijacks them.
Yeah,
You see a ripped and muscular Captain
he
Picard
is.
too.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah, he is.
Are you on the turn, Goodwill?
Maybe he is. Jean-Luc, mon capitaine. But yeah, so he's climbing up in the grey vest, and she's like desperately trying to like cling on to him, and she's like fighting on his trousers, and then we see Data come out from the mist with all the organic components like dissolved off him, pulling her back into the plasma. And I just like the desperation in Alex Krieg's voice as she's just like the screams, like she does not want to be, like she does not want to fall into this, she needs to get out of this. And it's just the scream as Data pulls her in to the coolant, and then the scene with her skull and her torso
Melting.
just dissolving away, and the way it's done again, 1996 people.
It looks great. Like this is the
Impressive.
thing. I was looking at this movie basically, like when I was watching it, being like, have they remastered this, or like, is this a new version that they've got on Amazon?
No.
And it's not. This is how the movie was. It's so fantastic.
I mean,
it's aged so well after all these years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be interested if Sammy thought the CGI still held up, considering it's like a 20.
It looks better than Attack of the Clones did, and that was like 5 years.
I'd also say, Sammy, does this look horrific enough? Like the Queen melting away. It's one of the pictures at the bottom, but it's so good. I love it.
Yeah. Phoenix breaks the warp barrier as all this is happening. Cochrane is just absolutely terrified. To quote Cochrane in this movie, and it's me on a plane, but you're right. But yeah, so she dissolves, and the Phoenix comes out of warp, turns around to Earth, and Cochrane just goes, "Is that Earth?" And LaForge is like, "That's it." He goes, "It's so small."
Yeah.
And
The
Ryan's
the
like,
context of how big the universe has now become.
yeah, and it's about to get a whole lot bigger. On the turn. But yeah, I like
the problem is
scene, though.
David's the one I want to get on the turn, not you, Goodwill. The movie's backfired.
I like the scene though, like after we come back from the Phoenix back to the Enterprise, where Picard comes back out of back to the ground. I don't know if you had the sound up or anything like that. As his boots touch the ground, as he's walking, it's a nice little touch to say like there's still a bit of like a remnant of coolant and stuff like that. It's still a bit hazardous.
Well, seeing all the Borg explode too.
Oh,
when the Queen dies.
This is an interesting thing because obviously the Queen dies and then all of the drones basically just explode, effectively. And I think what it is, it's to deal with the whole like the feedback effectively from basically going, hey, your main command structure is now gone. But it's movie stuff, but it works. Cool. But it kind of resolves the situation, and it kind of just goes, hey, the Queen is so important that the drone, the collective that they formed, this isolated collective, can't survive without her.
Yeah.
The scene where he breaks her neck.
Yeah.
He gets his up until this point, he gets his closure on the Queen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a stunning prop, absolutely stunning prop, and it's flinching and everything like that. And he breaks the spine and just drops it onto the floor. And we hear Data faintly go, "Captain," and he's like, he's all right, but it's the way
all of his organic bits have been burnt off.
But he goes, "Strange. For a time, I considered her proposal," and he's like, "How long of a time?" And she's like, "What? 0.43 seconds?"
No, 0.68 seconds.
8 seconds.
But to an android, that's That's a
Eternity.
lifetime. Yeah,
That's an
eternity.
eternity. Yeah.
Yep.
But then we get to
But
see.
I think this is the thing, though. It kind of this scene points out the idea of the Borg Queen throughout the whole film has been talking about how she's perfection, about how Data needs to become more like them, where they're basically bioorganic sort of machines. And yet this scene kind of just goes, she wouldn't have died if she was a full robot. Whereas Data survives. And it's the whole point of just going, maybe Data was perfect to start with, like
Ah.
maybe the whole logic of the Borg is like, no, you are making yourself less perfect. You
Their
just can't
ideology
see
is
it.
flawed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, their ideology is flawed. But we get to see one of the most iconic scenes in Star Trek history next. April 5th, 2063, First Contact Day. Aliens are about to land in Bozeman, Montana. Who are they going to be? We see a purple ship descend from the heavens. Land.
It's the Romulans.
It's the Romulans, yes.
Everyone dies.
Everyone dies at the end. A mysterious ship lands. A door opens. Very clever door. I like the way that the door opens. Like very geometric. Very, very of this race. And an alien being steps out of this vessel, takes his first steps on human soil, on native Earth soil, makes his way to the group of curious humans wondering what is going on. He's wearing a hood. He removes that hood. It's not a Romulan. It's a Vulcan. It's a Vulcan.
The music makes that scene, though.
Yeah.
But the thing is, right, what you have to remember, up until this point, there was no such thing. Like in Star Trek, there was no First Contact Day wasn't a thing. We didn't know that the Vulcans were the first alien race that humans had made contact with. We knew Zefram Cochrane broke the lightspeed barrier. We didn't know it was in something called the Phoenix, or it was after World War III, or anything like this. This film defined the Star Trek timeline so much, and that's why I say its legacy still lives on to this day, because it literally rewrote the history of Star Trek from the beginning and continued to write the history after it had aired. And it is such a pivotal movie in the Star Trek universe, and all these scenes are so pivotal. And Zefram Cochrane shaking hands with a Vulcan, and the Vulcan's like, live long and prosper, and Cochrane's just like,
Cochrane can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do the hand thing.
I can't do it either.
we're Saeed. And so he shakes a hand. He shakes his hand, and again, it's one of the most iconic. It's stills used for First Contact Day where they shake hands, and he just goes thanks.
Yeah.
And for the Enterprise crew to witness that, because Crusher sees it, Riker sees it, Troy sees it, they all get to see actual first contact. And I love the scene between Picard and Lily where Lily goes, you got to go back? And she goes, I envy you, the world you're going into. And Picard counters with, I envy you taking these first steps into a new frontier. Yeah. And I love that. And I love it because there is mutual envy. Yeah. Because this is the beginning of a bright future for Earth in 2063. Something we could really use right now. Where are you, Vulcans?
Yeah.
But exactly. It is a stunning scene. It is a legendary scene that has stayed for Star Trek forever. That has spawned First Contact Day, that spawned the Lower Decks episode where they celebrate First Contact Land in Bozeman, Montana. Yeah. But we see that the Enterprise warps back into present day, back into the 24th century with a completely mostly disintegrated organic component Data. And they warp away, and then we see the last scenes where Cochrane immediately just takes the Vulcans to a bar and goes, try this.
I love it, though. It's literally just Vulcans sitting around this same bar that we've been at, and then he's just like, hey, try all of these really strong drinks, and then he gets the jukebox on and plays Ooby Dooby.
Ooby Dooby by Roy Orbison, and then that's how the movie ends, like teaching the Vulcans how to dance.
Yeah, it's special.
When I say I love this movie, I love this movie for everything it has, everything it does, every story it tells. It is beautiful. It is perfect. It is quintessentially Star Trek in every way. It defines Star Trek going forward in the way that the uniforms, the lighting, the ships, the music, the stories. 30 years later, we had Star Trek Picard Season 3, where they use the First Contact theme for the end credits.
Made me cry.
It made me, when I first heard that, it did make me cry. And then you just see that the legacy of this film still lingered for Picard years and years, 30 years later, with the Borg, another Borg Queen.
Yeah.
I mean,
First.
I will counter that when I've watched this again like a couple of times so recently after seeing Star Trek Picard Season 3, it makes me more annoyed at Star Trek Picard Season 3 because I just go, this story has already been done.
It's been done.
Like, you know that thing where, remember when we were doing it and we were like so kind of disappointed that the villain turned out to be the Borg, because we were like, but we've already got closure on this. He's already got closure on the Borg. There's so much more you could have done with it rather than going, hey, we're gonna tell this story again and like bringing back a queen and stuff. So I kind of want to watch Season 3 again just to be like, do I still feel the same after watching First Contact so recently? But it's because it should have been the Dominion. It should have been
the Dominion.
The Par Wraiths.
It should have been Vodich. It should have been Vodich. Just keep her as the villain.
Yeah, she was brilliant.
Yeah.
But
this movie is special to me because it's the first movie I ever saw in theaters for Star Trek.
Yeah.
Fast forward 30 years later, I'm in Star Trek. We're getting to fulfill that. I'm getting to see my first Vulcan in a makeup chair getting his ears put on. Yes. And then obviously something else we won't talk about. Yeah. But it's special. It really is special.
It's just, for me, when I think about Star Trek, I love all Star Trek. All Trek is good Trek. When I think about what Star Trek is to me, it is this era of Star Trek. We had the next generation is brilliant. You can't fault the next generation, but the period where it really started to affect me was 1996 onwards, and it just became more and more a part of my life, and more, like a more serious part of my life. And it was just, this movie started that, and I will love this movie until the day. I don't think they will ever beat First Contact. They have tried, and there has been good movies after First Contact, but I do not think they will beat First Contact. I think that it was the last great Star Trek movie for me, because it was lightning in a bottle. It hit everything perfectly. It came out with the right time. It had the right story. It had the right director, the right special effects, musical score, everything. It was perfect. And they have tried and tried and tried since to recreate that, as well as the Wrath of Khan, hence Star Trek Into Darkness. But they have failed, because what they need to do is create an original Star Trek movie that doesn't play on the cues of the past.
Well, what they need to do, because I will say, this is the perfect Star Trek movie. Like, I can't think of a beat in this movie that is misplaced. I can't think of a part of this movie where it's not done. Like, I usually complain about characters, and like we have with Voyager, where I go, hey, they haven't used this character properly. They haven't done this properly. Everyone in this, like, I didn't used to get Lily as a character, and I kept going, why is Lily here? She's not doing anything. Why have they gone to this big length to have this character here? And then you realize that it's because she needs that outward view of stuff is what's essential. Like, if it was another member of the crew, like we see with Crusher and Worf, they would just give in to Picard. They wouldn't argue with him. They wouldn't have the Ahab speech with him. And so she has this payoff, and all the characters get to be true to themselves. And it's not like Into Darkness or whatever, where they're just going, hey, now we're a movie, we need to do movie stuff. For this, they go, hey, we're going to stay true to Star Trek. We're going to keep things as they would be in an episode, where it's like the interpersonal relationships, like the actual the science and everything in it. But then they go, oh, but we can amp this up a little bit because we're a movie. We can have some action scenes in there. We can have some dramatic stuff. And it just does it so well and doesn't just become an action movie. It's absolutely beautiful. And we haven't talked about the score enough, but the score is perfect. Like the way that the Borg themes are done and whatnot musically is absolutely amazing. Like the sense of dread throughout all of those scenes. It's it's sci-fi horror, man. And I never thought I'd see it with Star Trek.
David, do you have any more thoughts on this movie?
It's just perfect. It really is. It's it's a great sequel to Generations. Obviously, this being the second of the TNG movies, you couldn't ask for a better sequel movie. The music, obviously, the music's lasted till Star Trek Picard. It brought all his fans back to this time when we saw season 3 of Star Trek Picard, and it made everybody emotional. It brought the fan base back.
Yeah.
It's definitely, like I said, this is my first ever Star Trek movie that I saw in theaters, and who'd have thought all these years later I'd be in Star Trek, right? And two things, it's so special. Into Darkness, they never should have tried to do the Khan story, but obviously they tried, and some people enjoyed it. But yeah, this is a damn good, close to Wrath of Khan as you could ask for. And I don't think this movie will ever be repeated again.
No, I don't think so. Well,
and my arse is sore.
Well,
it's took
you are
2
on the
hours.
turn.
It's took 2 hours and 36 minutes, but we have concluded.
We did what? 3.5 hours on the 2023 review.
It took 2 hours and 36 minutes, but that has been our review of Star Trek First Contact. I could talk for hours. I deeply, deeply loved it. I bought the uniform just for this video. I deeply, deeply love this movie with all my heart. Like this is something so personal to me. And when we started doing the movie reviews all the way back in January, I was looking forward to First Contact because it's just so special for me. So thank you, David and Science Officer Synoiz, for allowing me to gush for the last 2.5 hours. However,
I will say though, before we move on, Sammy in the chat, like Sammy is someone who's not particularly massive on Trek. Like they watched this movie today, and it's been wonderful seeing her reactions. This is wonderful. Sammy from Monsters Up North and from the main Nerdy Up North podcast. And she's basically saying, what is it? This movie has had a profound effect on me. Thank you for introducing me to this movie. I get why it's so special to use. And it's true. It's the idea of there's always a gateway into Trek where you just go, these are the things I like that are reflected in this. Like Trek is not just a one beat medium or show.
Yeah. Well, we are receiving for the first time in a while. We are receiving
since fucking Vegas, man.
An incoming transmission.
Incoming transmission.
God, I hope this works. Welcome, everybody, to the double wheel of episodes. If this is your first time watching Trekkin' Up North, first of all, welcome. Second of all, welcome to the double wheel of episodes. Brief explanation. Within this wheel is every episode of Star Trek in existence. Huge
except
asterisks.
Voyager.
Except Voyager.
Because we're taking it out because we're sick of fucking Voyager.
We're having a break from Voyager in a while. What we do, we ask what episodes we want to review next week. What would be our preferred episodes that we would like to review next week? Synoiz always says Code of Honor. I have a mild aneurysm. And we spin the wheel.
Code of Honor, bitch.
we spin the wheel. We spin the wheel. And whatever it lands on, we must review for next week. So, as ever, David, what would you like to see Trekkin' Up North review?
Come on, do it with me, David. Come on.
Gambit.
Ha! Get in. absolutely love it. God, Gambit, that's a good episode. I want
2 episodes.
a nice Next Generation episode, family, because I've been thinking about the family episode from season
Which
4.
one's family?
Lower decks. The lower decks.
No, Next Generation family, where he
No,
goes
the
back
lower
to
deck.
Liver.
Oh yes.
Where he goes
Oh
back to
God,
Liver.
that's
Yeah,
literally
after
just after Best of Both Worlds, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was a great episode.
No, Beth, not Code of Honor. Shush. Or I would love an Enterprise episode, but I'm waiting for my jacket to arrive. Will you hurry up delivering that jacket, please?
I think it would be really good to get family, because obviously that's the only episode where we get to see his brother, and then obviously in Generations we find out that his brother and his nephew have like died. So it's kind of it's a big profound thing. I mean, me personally, I will say I still want the drumhead. The drumhead is just. I'd love to talk about that.
However, I am sick to death of the red uniform, so I'm going to say late series DS9 because I like this uniform. It's actually really comfortable and I'm not hot. So yes.
Siege of AR 558.
Siege of AR 558. What a great episode that is. Synoiz, what is your episode that you're hoping for?
No, I said the drumhead. The drumhead is what I'm hoping for, but obviously Code of Honor.
Okay,
we have to do it eventually.
You know what? No, I wouldn't mind. Tin Man.
Oh, Tin Man.
Ooh, that's a good one for TNG.
That's a good one. Right. When the Dabo wheel lands, we all have to yell at the top of our lungs, Dabo! So are we all ready, chaps? In 3, 2, 1. Dabo! God's sakes, I'm going to have to dry clean that uniform. Bloodlines! Son of a bitch. Oh!
Which one's Bloodlines?
Oh, just
we're going to have to Google it. I don't remember directly.
Bloodlines. I will get that up for you now.
Bloodlines.
Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 7, Episode 22. This is a really good episode, guys.
This is pretty much the end.
Damon Bock threatens the life of a son Picard never knew he had.
Oh
yeah. I remember.
I remember this one.
Yeah, very late, very, very late on. I think this was 4 episodes before the finale. So late season, The Next Generation. I'm going to have to get the uniform dry cleaned for next week. Again. But yeah, so next week on Trekking Up North, we will be reviewing Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 7, Episode 22, Bloodlines. Let me get back to the main screen. Well, tomorrow, something special is happening, isn't it, Science Officer Synoiz?
Nah, no idea. No idea what that's about. But tomorrow
Promote it, you harlot.
We have our wonderful Nerdy Up North quiz at Geek Retreat in Sunderland. In the UK, sadly, David, but if you want to post yourself over, I will receive you willingly. Never thought I'd say that on air, but we will be doing it. And because my competition Mixed Drag is over now, we are expanding the charities that we're raising money for. So tomorrow, all of our money raised will be for the amazing FACT, which is Fighting Against Cancers Together, Fighting All Cancers Together, which is a wonderful Northeast-based charity that got recommended by part of the team, which it will be really good. It's going to be really special because a dear friend of mine, Mark, or Junkin as I know him, basically has ties to it, and basically he raises money for it, kind of thing. And so he's going to come along, which is great, getting to have another one of my friends come to one of these events. And we're going to have banners, we're going to have everything, we're going to have a big raffle. So yeah, come down 5 p.m. at Geek Retreat in Sunderland and take part in this nerdy quiz and take part in our raffle where you can win lots and lots of exciting raffle prizes.
David, is there anything you would like to promote?
That you can talk about.
Like you could talk about.
Get Trapped, available now on digital.
There you
There you
go.
go. Watch Trap. There we go.
Watch Trap.
The other stuff,
Wait,
the other stuff we won't talk about. We won't talk about Section 31 yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not yet. When
Not
you're
yet.
allowed to. Oh, one thing I need to mention, if you haven't actually seen on my socials, because I've been kind of quiet about it because it's still too much of a shock. I am going to be performing at Drag Idol All Stars next Sunday. Now, the important thing is that basically Drag Idol was the competition that I first started drag in. My first ever performance on stage in drag was as week one of Drag Idol 2019, which is 5 years ago this year. And I've had the joy of them accepting me back as an all-star, which is basically where they get competitors from the competition from all the years it's been going who didn't manage to win, and then they sort of get them to perform again, and then they get to win. So they get a chance to perform again on a huge theatre stage with screen behind me and whatnot, get to do whatever I want, up to 10 minutes. And I will try and entertain you. That is at Boulevard in Newcastle on Sunday the 8th, or no, the 6th. Sunday the 6th of October. I don't think I'm going to win, but I'm desperately going to try my best and try to put on a wonderful show for everyone. And who knows, I might end up with a crown and be a Drag Idol All-Star winner. Well, be a Drag Idol winner, effectively, but let's see what happens. But yeah, the support I've had for it, because I've been through a very dark time lately, and this is like a big dream of mine being realized, because I've wanted to get my chance to perform, because in my year I didn't get to the final. And what happens is you do the competition in bars and stuff, and then basically the final takes place at Boulevard, which is a huge theatre venue, and I never got that chance, so now I do. And the pressure is real, putting together a good enough number and working with backing dancers and working with getting the videos and stuff sorted, but we're gonna try and hopefully it'll be fun. But yeah, that's it. So I don't know, follow my socials, thevelvetsnatch.com and whatnot, and Instagram, and you will find out more about that if you want to come along. There we go.
You can find Nerdy Up North on every single social media platform that you can possibly think of. All the links are in the description below. You can also find friends of the show, such as Clone Star, which I am on, and Search for the Trek, which I am on, and everything else I am soon going to be on, because I am like the herpes of Star Trek.
Resistance is futile.
Resistance is futile, yes. Please follow Clone Star. They are fantastic. We recently just did an interview with the lovely Bonnie Gordon and the Hageman brothers, creators of Star Trek Prodigy and the Lego movie. Search for Trek. Please subscribe to that YouTube channel. And we also have a Patreon. So please give me money, because I desperately want to survive. Trekking Up North, if you have not like this video already, what are you doing? It's been nearly 3 hours. Click that like button, click subscribe, and click the bell for Nerdy Up North.
Yeah, because then you get to enjoy our amazing. Buy the shirts. Well, we haven't released the merch yet, but we'll get the shirts.
Yep,
we will. You will be able to buy them soon, I think.
The merch is forthwith. And the other thing is, check out the other wonderful Nerdy Up North shows. We have Gigs Up North, which happens sporadically. We have Gaming Up North and the whole Twitch channel. We have Monsters Up North, where the wonderful Sammy, who's been joining us in the chat, holds reign with Dan. And the hilarious thing is the Nerdy Quiz next month is going to be very horror themed. So we're going to have Sammy as a wonderful guest host for that, which will be amazing. Perfect. And yeah, and also check out the audio version of the podcast. So if you're not already, if you can't do this, if you can't make this on a Friday, check us out on Spotify at Nerdy Up North, at Trekking Up North, at Monsters Up North, etc. Because Sammy's the one who puts all of that together, and it's a lot of work apparently. So she's a hard worker, is our Sammy, but we love her for it.
Thanks, Sammy.
Well, that has been our review of Star Trek First Contact. David's got a sore
I'm
ass.
sorry I made your ass hurt, David. I'm sorry.
David's got a sore ass. I've got a partner to pick up that's been waiting for me for the last hour. So I think it's time to wrap this up. So as ever, thank you so much for everyone who joined in on the live chat. If you love this video, leave a comment below if you like First Contact. Thank you to my gorgeous co-host Science Officer Synoiz, to our very special guest David Jones. I have been Captain Goodwill. Until next week on Trekking Up North, stay safe, look after each other, live long and prosper, and as ever, Miles?
Long live the Empire.
Was it good for you?
Miles?
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 Miles?